Throughout history, free thinkers have outraged the religious with their wacky ideas about the virtues of free speech, reason, and of course, eating babies. Now, God is dying, and it's time to dispose of his remains. From the pits of hell, Satan sends two puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment with Ali Rizwi and Armin Navabi.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. This episode is going to be basically me and Armin, and we're going to be talking about some current events that have been happening, specifically with a sort of a resurgence of the activity in Israel and Palestine, which has happened many, many times before. It's happening again. Are you pro-Israel or are you pro-Palestine? Well, if you're like me, you have been accused of being both. The hardcore pro-Palestinian people think that I'm very pro-Israel, and the hardcore pro-Israeli people think I'm too sympathetic to Palestine. And this is something that I think we've been struggling with for a while. And then there's a lot of interest, especially about ex-Muslims. When they were Muslims, there's an assumption that they're pro-Palestine. Then when they're ex-Muslims, there's this assumption sometimes that people are now going to be totally pro-Israel. We're also going to be getting into the Iran deal, the one that Donald Trump, he didn't really pull out of it. He actually violated it in a way because he canceled it. He didn't, because it's a deal. You can't technically pull out of it. You either violate it or you don't. So we're going to be talking about how the terminology around that and the dynamics around that and everything that's happened. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my co-host here. Armin and I both co-host this podcast. Armin Navabi, the founder of Atheist Republic and the author of Why There Is No God. He's right here.
Hello.
And he's been handling all the technical issues right now. So
right. I just realized that I did not add my own camera to this for our live people, so I'm doing that right now. As you
I'm just seeing me, and it's not a very good looking podcast right now, Armin. So you should probably
I should be there now. Now I should be there.
Oh, are you? Okay, cool. Let me just play it. I actually have it paused. Okay, you know what? I'm going to just mute it.
No. Okay, fine. Do you guys see? Okay, you can. All right. Do you guys see me now?
I see you. Yeah, you're right in front of my face. I love it.
Okay,
that's great.
All right. Okay, so yeah, I wasn't listening to any of what you were saying because I was trying to figure out the technical stuff.
I basically solved the whole issue.
Oh, okay. The Middle East solved. Great.
That's it. That's fine. Bye, everybody. Okay, so here's the thing. So, Armin, you want to start a little bit? Let's maybe go with a review of some of the recent.
Can we list the things that we're going to talk about? Because the list, each one of the items on the list seems to be like take hours and hours to just even do justice to it. Are we covering the Iran deal, the protests in Palestine and Israel's reaction to it? Are we also going to do the Lebanon elections and Iraq elections, or are we going to keep it to these two main, the Iran deal and Palestine? Like,
I think we can touch on that briefly, the Lebanon and Iraq, but I think focus of this is going to be the Middle East conflict, the Israel-Palestine and the Iran deal, because I think that's what most of the chatter out there is about. And I think we can, this is probably something that we're going to do regularly now. I mean, for our listeners is talk about, because we got asked a lot about issues that are happening in the Middle East, and people hear, sort of one side of it, and people hear from the other side of it, and often the sides are just right down the religious lines, the religious groups. So people want to know technically, what do we think of it, or what do other ex-Muslims think of it? So that's the kind of perspective that we're probably going to start bringing you about this. So there's going to be a series of these. Right now, I think we'll focus on because this is a long conversation. So I think the Middle East conflict and the Iran deal, because it's somewhat related to it as well. The Iran factor.
Yeah, it is. Can you, and also if you guys in the live chat, please send us your questions. So you are responsible for making this the direction that you want to. This is another thing about being a patron. You have to actually do some work being a patron. You guys so the live chat is right now only for our patrons, but I'm hoping that they could steer us in the direction that they want to take this as well, right? Because honestly, with regards to any aspect, Israel, Palestine, there's so many different aspects to it, and each one of those topics could be talked about for hours and hours and hours, right? We could go into religion. We could go to ancient history. We could go into what happened after World War I. We could talk about the settlements forever. We could talk about Hamas and Fatah and their relationship. We could talk about other groups. We could talk about Israel's politics and why
the Iran factor.
The Iran factor is like the big, yeah. So, and anybody that is basically telling you this is it, and, usually giving you, direct, small answers, they don't trust those kind of answers, right? Because it is complicated. Even if you want to, so there's different methods of looking at this as well, right? You could, if you're looking into saying judging something and explaining something are usually two different things, right? And usually when you're explaining something, there are a lot of people that are looking for a moral judgment are disappointed because they're not they don't want just an explanation for how we got where we are. They want to also do take sides and sometimes it's easy to take sides. So when you're actually just explaining things, they might be angry. Well, why this was such an easy side to take, why didn't you take sides? But those are completely different discussions, making moral judgments and explaining things, and usually when you get so deep into the details, you sometimes forget to also make moral judgments. And it's not wrong to make moral judgments. Sometimes you don't have to take sides and make moral judgments, right? But when you're studying the history and the religion and the politics behind things, sometimes you notice that humans are just like other animals that you study, and then you become less, you become less judgmental, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't be judgmental because you have to make moral decisions at some point, right? But once you're analyzing, you get so interested in the details of things that when people ask you, well, whose side you are, they're like, oh, wait, okay, that's now you have to put a different hat on, right? And another problem is that there are so many different actors on both sides and on multiple sides of these conflicts, that when you wrap a whole bunch of different groups under the label of one country, then it becomes almost impossible to make a judgment, right? Like when you are talking about the country X, there are so many different elements within country X that some of them you can support, some of them you can't support, some of them you are totally against, and some of those elements are made of their own sub-elements, sub-entities that is going to be difficult for some of them to make a judgment on. Some of them are easy to make a judgment on. It could be like, okay, this is fucked up. Yeah, this is a terrorist group, or this. But when there's a group within a group that is easily to condemn, a lot of times people want you to attribute that condemnation to the group that contains that entity. But you can't, like if A is a subcategory of B and A is like an obvious immoral group, then people want you to apply that entire judgment on B because it contains A, but you can't do that. You can only condemn A. Do you know what I mean? And other times is that you have two different groups on the side, but one of them is way, way worse than the other. And then when you're talking about one of the other one that is much better when it comes to, then people were like, why are you condemning this group? Because every country, every organization has obviously going to have a lot of things you could point out and say that was wrong, this was wrong. But when you point at something and you say that's wrong, people will want to say, well, then you're against this country, where you are not. You're just pointing at something and you say, well, that was not the right move to make. And then people compare it with a country that is worse, and like, well, how could you be against this country when this other country is doing that? I'm not saying, that's classic whataboutism, right? So a lot of times, for example, when it comes to Israel, obviously Israel makes mistakes. Obviously, any country makes mistakes. It's possible for you not to have a country that makes a mistake. And when you point to mistakes that Israel makes and you condemn some mistakes that Israel makes, people usually point to Hamas and be like, well, whose side you would rather be on? Israel, that is a democratic country where it's pro-gay rights, pro-this, pro-that, liberal, one of the countries that, if you're relative to all these other nations around it, has advanced so much with so very little, with the odds being always against it, with having neighbors that it was always hostile towards it, and against all odds, it becomes one of the technologically most advanced countries in the world, with one of the countries that produces much more scientific literature per capita than any other country in the world. One of the countries that is responsible for a lot of the technologies that we all enjoyed today, and then not even the most liberal, moderate Islamic country is even close to being anything like that when it comes to Israel. So then when Israel does something and you point to it and you say that's wrong, Israel shouldn't do that, people will call you a hypocrite or an anti-Israel, because they compare it to groups that, like Hamas, that will any sane person will look at Hamas and call it a terrorist group. I think that's something that we could agree on. I hope.
Yep.
And a group of people that use children as shield. A group of people that if they had the same amount of weaponry as Israel, or if they were in charge of that area, I don't think any of the Jews in that area will make it alive. So they compare it to Hamas, and they're like, how could you condemn Israel in this act when this is what they're dealing with? But again, how could you not? There is no country that is perfect, and Israel is far from perfect. Obviously, Israel has made mistakes, many mistakes. When you point to it and you say that's a mistake, and I'm against that, that does not mean that you're pro-Hamas. That does not mean that you're a pro-terrorist group. And I acknowledge that if a group like Hamas had had the same amount of access to weaponry, if the Jews in Israel were where Hamas was today, and if Hamas was where Israel was today, there would be blood in the streets, way above anything we've seen today, right? But then now the question is, like, when you're talking about Palestine, are you talking about Hamas, or if you're talking about groups like, are you just talking about groups like Hamas, or can you condemn all of Palestine? And how could you? Then people on the other side would be like, well, what are you talking about? Look at these Palestinians. These are people that were moved out of this. Before the Jews came here, this was Arab land. The Jews were a minority group of people. The Jews came here out of nowhere. The British, with their imperialist agenda, just took a piece of land and they promised it to the Jews for their own self-interest. It wasn't theirs to promise it. They even promised it before even the World War I was over. Like, even before the Ottoman Empire was defeated, they managed to promise that to the Jews. These people came here. Then they took the land. They stayed here, and then the UN came in and they divide everything almost into equal parts. And it wasn't even the UN's to give to make such an agreement. So they say the Arabs were in that area were not happy with it. They said this is their land, so they waged war on Israel, and they lost. And Israel used that as an excuse to keep on expanding its territory and pushing out more Arabs from the area. And now their situation is that they've been driven out of their own lands, and the parts that they are, as the Gaza Strip part of it, is basically an open prison. The conditions are horrific. They can't move in, they can't move out. Even in the West Bank area, mobility has been limited so much. That area is supposed to be Palestinian country, even according to the UN agreement, but Israel's keep making settlements there. So they're like, why would you even say anything good about Israel? They have constantly ignored international law. They have gone into a place where they wasn't theirs. It was given to them by people that didn't have a right to give it to them. And they say this has nothing to do with religion. This has everything about imperialism and people coming in and invading the land of the natives there. So how could you even say anything like that? That how could you even be on this side of Israel, on the side of Israel? But then, another point, Israelis will come and say, like, well, no, this is our ancestral lands. There's historical records that we were here way before anybody else. Anyways, I've been talking for so long. Do you want to grab on any? Is there anything in the live chat?
No, I think that it's a good summation of everything. So that's why
my summation could go on and on. Like, I have so much more to say. I just want to make sure that you get in something.
Yeah, I just want to make there's some stuff in the live chat happening about Palestine, and this is a sort of common thing that people think that Palestine isn't really a real thing and it's not a real word, and it only existed. It only came into being Palestine 50 years ago, 100 years ago, something like that. But that's actually not true. So even during the Byzantine period, this area that's now called this Palestine, Israel.
But it never existed as a country before.
No,
yeah.
No, but it did exist as a land. So it was called Syria Palestina, and it was later divided into Palestina 1 and Palestina 2. If I remember correctly, and this was way before, and even before this, there have been there's a lot of literature, some of it in the BC period, as far back as 800 BC, where the word has appeared. So this is something this area, Israel, Palestine, both of these terms are very, very old, and they've been around for a very long time. But there is a lot of sort of propaganda around it, and both sides try to advance their own narrative, which is really interesting. This is one of the reasons that now my main problem with the way that the discourse goes around Israel and Palestine, right? Specifically, is that hold on one second. Yeah, is that?
Can I address what you just said? Can I address quickly what you just said? A lot of the comments, a lot of the arguments seem to be around who was there first, right? And I think that's such a non-issue. A lot of the countries that exist today are somewhere that somebody was not there before, right? I mean, when a lot of Americans say they were there first, I ask the Americans, well, are you now willing to leave your house and give it to a native? You're living. They were here first, right?
Well, the Native Americans, it's their ancestral homeland,
right?
I mean, going back not just thousands of years, but just a few hundred years, right? That was their ancestral homeland.
Yeah, and it's kind of like those people that come and comment on YouTube and Twitter, like a first comment, like, okay, that doesn't mean anything, right? And when Israel and when the borders were being drawn after the World War II, that was an era where so many countries, like, they were cutting up countries and handing them out like they're handing out cake, right? The whole rise of so many nations were being defined at that time, right? To be picky about why this one was drawn, this one. So are you going to go, like, there were so many countries in the Europe also being redefined on what's a nation and what's not a nation, right?
Well, I'd also bring in actually a lot of people in Pakistan, I know. Right. Pakistan, that's interesting that people in Pakistan tend to be they're like, well, it's the land of the Palestinians, it's not the land of the Jews. And then, then you look at the other side happening, because Pakistan itself was carved out of India. Right. India was around for, centuries and centuries and centuries. And then Pakistan, when that was divided along religious lines, around the same time that Israel was created in 1948 and Pakistan was created in 1947. And what happened was that they split it. There were large Hindu communities and Sikh communities in where Pakistan is right now were also rushed out of their homes. They were forced to leave where they lived, and same thing in India. And there were up to 14 million people who migrated. That's massive compared to what happened.
Even before then, when the land was promised to the Jews, this was a time that the Jews were fleeing Europe. They didn't think, like, there was such anti-Semitism, anti-Jew hatred all over Europe.
No, it's the Holocaust. Yeah.
Well, no, this is before. Even before. The Holocaust just speeded it up, right? But even before then, the anti-Jew sentiment was so huge. They were looking for land, right? This was when the birth of Zionism, right? They're looking for a place for all the Jews to go. And initially, it wasn't about religion. When they were looking for a place to go, the only thing that all of a sudden made it religious was like, hey, why do we just go back to this place in our ancient books that it says we should go, right? Other places were even considered, not just Israel, right? But sorry, you were saying something.
Yeah, no, I was. So what I was saying is the thing that strikes me most about Israel and Palestine is that the majority of Jews you meet, I mean, not in, I think in the Western world or mostly North America, this is not really the case, but most of the Jews that you meet around that region tend to be very pro-Israel. Most of the Muslims you meet tend to be very pro-Palestinian. And this to me is the nature of a tribal conflict. I mean, if it was really about the merits, you would see some people on both sides saying, hey, maybe the other side has a point, but that's not true. And what it shows me is that a lot of the Palestinians, who are very pro-Palestine, if they were born in Jewish families or in Israeli families, would probably be very pro-Israel. A lot of the pro-Israeli people, if they were born in Palestinian families, they would probably be just as avidly pro-Palestinian, because that is the nature of the conflict. And that means that it's not about the ideas, it's not really about the merits. A lot of it, even the positions that people take on this issue, are an accident of birth. It's a very rabid form of nationalism that is that's got religion combined with it.
Right. So, but then what are the merits, though? What are yeah, I understand.
Well, the merits are everything that you're talking about. So everything you're talking about, all of the facts that you discussed. You talked about where the Palestinians had points. You have talked about what was going on with Israel and the formation of Israel. So all of the initial summation that you did right in the beginning of this, I think that you summed up a lot of the history, or I mean, not everything, obviously, because there's a lot. But you talked about, at least you were considering, even if you didn't take a position, at least you're considering and making an effort to understand where these things are coming from.
But the thing, when it comes to the history, right, with regards to who has the right to what, it really depends on how far back you go. And the thing is that I think it shouldn't even matter you shouldn't even go back one generation. You have people being born into a situation that they had nothing to do with, right? When like a lot of people are like, okay, when the Jews first were promised this land by the British, when they first came here, it wasn't their land. But at the same time, you could be like, well, you could take Jews as well. They were running away from a whole lot of hatred. And the lot of the land that they went into wasn't really filled, and they came and they bought land from absentee landowners, legally purchased it. So that was the initial thing. But a lot of people got angry because a lot of the farmers that worked at those lands were Muslim Arabs, and as soon as they purchased it, they kicked them all out and they started settling. So that was the original conflict. The thing is that the Jewish and Muslim and Arab and everybody else that is being born in this, whatever that's the origin, that's the very first start of the conflict, right? So that's but nobody that is born in this situation had anything to do with that, right? You can't be like you can't get somebody, okay, you're born in this situation, but your parents came here like this, so you need to get the fuck out, even though this is your house and you're working here.
Yeah,
right?
there are like 3 generations of people that have been born there that are,
right.
Whether it's since the creation of Israel, there are many Jewish families that, their ancestors or their great-grandparents, actually, they came from Europe, but they were born there, they grew up there, they died there, they had kids there, and then now they have grandkids there.
Yeah.
They're like 3 or 4 generations that have already been there. It is their land. It's the Palestinians, they've been there for the exact same thing. It's their land as well. I mean, this whole idea of and the weird thing is, I actually find that the people who are living there tend to be least objective when they're looking. This is one of those situations where I think people who are looking at it from above or looking at it from outside seem to have more rational viewpoints.
Actually,
of it.
To be fair, I've seen a lot of objectivity from Israeli citizens, less so from Palestine. But to be fair, you would expect dogma, and when you're born in a situation like a Gaza Strip, you're gonna be brainwashed. Okay, like I would be surprised if you're not, right? But I have seen a lot extreme diversity of viewpoints from the Israeli side, like extreme, right? Like if you go to Israel,
Haaretz, the publication of Haaretz is it might as well come out of the West Bank. I mean, a lot of it seems very, very pro-Palestinian in a lot of ways.
Right. Yeah. When I was in university, I was like arguing with this my Israeli student. She was arguing for Palestinians, and I was arguing the Israeli part. And I'm from Iran, and I was arguing for Israel. And she was Israel. She was arguing for Palestine. It was so bizarre. And she was getting really angry with me. It was amazing. And she's from Israel. Like she's a Jewish Israeli citizen. She actually went to court because she didn't want to join the military because she thinks that the military of Israel is illegal. They're doing an illegal action. They want to be a part of it, right? And in Israel, you have to do military service, both men and women. You have to go through that. That's
a really interesting, and I think that you're absolutely right about it. So there's one of the interesting things that's happening right now, and this way we can actually move to the current situation as well, is that there is a divergence in the way that many Israeli Jews think and many of the American Western Jews think. Like in Europe and the U.S., the diaspora, the Jewish diaspora, their views have become, there's less support for Israel and Israel's policies among the diaspora now than there was before, and a lot of this has changed. Because of everything that's happening.
It's not that it's not much support. I think the extremes on both sides are getting more popular. You know what I mean? Not the extremes. Yeah. Not that is okay. I don't know. I'm just saying people are becoming within the Jewish community. People are becoming more and pro-Israel position and more anti-Israel position at the same time. Like you're getting those more vocal groups from both sides. But the point is that almost most countries, the people that are living where they are now are not the same people that were there if you go back far enough in history, right? So that argument that your ancestors came here for a wrong reason, therefore all of you get the fuck out, that's a nonsense argument, right? Because almost everybody has to leave wherever they are from, okay? I don't think there's not many countries that would survive that level of scrutiny if you go far back in history.
I think there's a recent there is this thing. There's a sensitivity to someone who has been living in a certain land, and then people come in and they say, okay, now you're moving out of this land. You're forced out of your houses. You're forced out of your businesses, and you have to move somewhere else. When you're actually in the middle of that situation and you're going through it, that is a tough thing to go through. And I think that that's something that we have to understand. I'll quote actually. I think a lot of people here like Christopher Hitchens. And he said something really interesting when he was on the Hugh Hewitt show when he was alive. And this was his view on the Israel-Palestine situation, I think as recently as 2010 or 2011. And he said this, quote, "In order for Israel to become part of the alliance against whatever we want to call it, religious barbarism, theocratic, possibly thermonuclear theocratic or nuclear theocratic aggression, it can't. It'll have to dispense with the occupation. It's as simple as that."
It can't, and then he said, but it can't. Okay, but go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, let me finish the quote and then we can discuss it because, we can figure out how much we agree with or not. So This is, again, Hitchens. It can be, you can think of it as a kind of European-style, Western-style country if you want, but it can't govern other people against their will. It can't continue to steal their land in the way that it does every day. And it's unbelievably irresponsible of Israelis, knowing the position of the United States and its allies, are in around the world to continue to behave in this unconscionable way. And I'm afraid I know too much about the history of the conflict to think of Israel as just a tiny little island surrounded by a sea of ravening wolves and so on. I mean, I know quite a lot about how that state was founded and the amount of violence and dispossession that involved. And I am a prisoner of that knowledge. I can't unknow it, end quote.
Wait,
so,
yeah.
No, so what I'm saying is he was clearly very uncomfortable, extremely uncomfortable with that, all of that, people being forced out of their houses and moving, and the splitting of the land, and when the formation of Israel happened. Yet at the same time, he was also very supportive of Israel as a Jewish state for the same reasons that we're talking about. And this goes to show that it is complicated. You may not like the way certain things happen in the past, but once they have been around, and there are 3 or 4 generations that have passed through, and when you try to look at it objectively, it's a complicated situation.
Okay, but let's be clear. Let's be talk about how somebody would respond to Christopher Hitchens accusing Israel like that. So you have the UN. So first of all, you see that Jews and Muslims can't live with each other. The Jews keeps increasing, and the Muslims there are like, okay, this needs to stop. So there's a lot of hostility. So the UN comes in and they say, first of all, this is when the UN was first born. They're like, put the hardest homework in their lap from the very beginning. They're like, okay, here, solve this. And ever since its birth, this is what the first thing that the UN had to deal with, right? So the UN comes and draws some lines, and the lines look really weird, and it's almost half and half at the beginning, right? But then the thing is that this is another thing that Israelis say to their point, is that they agreed. They said, yes, it was the Muslims that didn't agree, okay? By the way, we keep using the words more Muslim and Arab interchangeably here, and Palestinian interchangeably. Let's be clear. These are completely separate. Okay, Palestine. You could be Palestine, Arab, and Muslim are very, very there are many Christians in Palestine. There are many Arabs that are Israeli, and so it's 20%
of Israelis are Arab.
Right. So we're talking about Palestine with nationality, we're talking race, and we're talking about religion. This is what makes it more complicated. But then
ethnicity and religion. Yeah. It's not really a separate race. It's more of an ethnicity, ethnicity.
So you have the 2 separate wars, and the more famous one is the 6-Day War, right? Where you have a whole bunch of fucking different Arab nations gang up on Israel, and they all attack it at the same time. Israel said, look, we agreed to the UN resolution. They didn't. They attacked us. We retaliated and we won. Of course, we're going to grab land. This is how every country, like throughout history, when another country attacks another country and they win, what happens? They get the land, right? And they say, actually, if you compare us to the other countries, we voluntarily gave most of it up after we gained it. Like they got all of Palestine, all of whatever was considered Palestine by United Nations. They got the Golamites and they got the Sinai Peninsula, right? And they were like, okay, let's have let's sit there and agree on something. You're like, okay, we'll give Sinai Peninsula back here, all of it, all right? And this Palestine is again Palestine again, good, but less land than before. And Golan Heights is like just like a gray area. Yeah. But they gave that. But anyways, they nobody has done that. So but another thing is a whole bunch of religious Jews in Israel. They were like, we're moving to West Bank, right? That's because we won the war, and they didn't even wait for the government to allow them, right? They're like, we won the war. This is our land now, right? So they just started moving there for religious reasons, okay? And a lot of people that say the religion has nothing to do with this, that's horseshit, okay? Because
it says it in the Torah. It says in the Torah that go into this land, this is your land, and drive out the people before you. This is in Exodus 23, verses 21 and 22. Like it's 31, 32, and it's in Deuteronomy. It's everywhere. Just go into the land that God gave to you. Drive the people out. Don't make a covenant with them. Has all of that. But there is a counter point to what you said, Armin, about how hey, listen, the Israelis agreed. It was the Arabs who didn't agree. What happened was that the Arabs were there in that land, and it was the Jewish people who were actually coming in, right? So again, I'm not making a judgment on this because I agree that in history the way that happened.
Sorry, say that again.
Well, if you're living in Germany, right, and then a whole bunch of Greek people or a bunch of Syrian people, if they come in because they're fleeing persecution, for instance, and then the UN says, okay, there's this huge chunk of Germany in the middle, we're going to split it in half, and this is where these foreign people are going to come. And supposing, obviously there's an ancestral claim to it, that's another issue. But if you look at it at the acute situation where people are like, okay, we're going to take your country, we're going to divide it up. Now you guys are going to move out to the outer parts, and these people are going to come into the middle parts. Then of course the people who are coming in are going to agree, right?
Yeah.
It's the people who are receiving them, they'll be like, wait, what's going on?
But then at that point, then you have to say, okay, so then the Israelis would say, so just to be clear, then you're against the UN resolution and we were for the UN resolution. So stop using the UN as a way to tell us to do something, because you all broke the UN resolution that we agreed to. That's right.
So that is the pro-Palestinian positions, that they did not like the old UN resolutions that created Israel.
If you didn't like the UN position, never use UN as a way to tell Israelis that they're breaking international law, because international law doesn't apply anymore, because international law told the Jews that there's something agreed to. You broke the international law first. We're reacting to it, right? Mm-hmm. But your point is that
But those are that is the argument. I mean, those are the arguments on both sides, and they never end, and they're probably not going to end, because when you actually really think about it, if you're in each of these situations, whether you're a Jewish person who's fleeing the Holocaust and going to what you think is your ancestral homeland, biblically, and or you're a Palestinian who was there in 1946, say, and you had a whole budget, and you're forced out of your thing. You're not going to be thinking of, okay, well, 2,000 years ago, guys, this happened. That's going to be something that's going to immediately affect you when you're packing up your wife and kids and your family and your lands and whatever, and you're moving to another place. So that's where the issue is. I just wonder, again, another point about people not saying that this has nothing to do with religion. I was just in Banff recently, which is in Western Alberta. It's one of the most in Canada. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. Very low population. If Yahweh and the Torah had said that was a promised land, right? If he had the sense to do that, then we'd all be in a much better situation. But the reason that Israel is where it is right now, and it's not in the Banff area, where they probably have a much easier time, is because of biblical prescription, and because whoever wrote the Bible wasn't didn't really know. It was
there was actually who was it? There was somebody in Israeli politics. I think it was the first president or something. She mentioned that that Moses took us Jews 40 years around the desert, and he eventually gave us the only place in the whole Middle East that doesn't have a drop of oil in it. So yeah, like, it's actually the worst part of it, right? It has nothing. It has little water. It has no oil. It's a really shitty area even before the Jews went there, the Arabs left most of it empty because there's not much there. Right?
Yeah, it's actually, it's pretty quiet. I have to address, sorry, Armin, I have to address one thing that Jim King is saying here. He said the early Zionists were mostly atheists. They weren't looking at things biblically. They wanted a homeland since they didn't think they would be seen as equals in Europe. So I completely agree with that. They were mostly
at the beginning, yes.
Right? They wanted a homeland since they didn't think they could be seen as equals in Europe. That was true, and it was very, very obvious. However, this idea that they weren't looking at things biblically, they actually had to look at things biblically. Right. And the reason for that is because all of the places in the world, this is the one place where Israel ended up being, which is defined in the scripture. Right. The second thing is there were other propositions. There were other places that were proposed for Israel by these atheist Zionists, but the religious Jews were coming in, like some of the Russian Orthodox Jews, for instance, they'd come in, they had insisted that the land be over there. I remember there was a Uganda proposal. There was other stuff that I wrote about. Yeah, that was.
But to be fair to the Zionists, it seemed like a good idea at the time, right? I mean, at the time, you're like,
there weren't a whole lot of options, were there?
There weren't a lot of options. Everybody is prosecuting you. You're trying to run away. You're like, well, at least here we have like some people that support us because we have like, we could use like history as an argument, right? Well, I mean, anywhere they would go, they would probably be pushed back. But they were like, the religious reasons, even the non-religious ones were like, maybe we could use that as an argument for here, right? Right.
And the thing is that they, it's not that, again, the Zionists were atheists and they seemed to be, I think they were pretty open to having Israel somewhere else, anybody who would welcome them. But they were under pressure. Even like they actually had the same reason for having Israel where it is right now that the current Israeli government has for continuing settlement policy, and that is pressure from sort of the far right religious Orthodox Jews, because they believe in in the Torah it says that this is your land, you have to go and occupy it. So the settlement building, there is no secular argument for it.
Well, I was going to get to that, but we changed the argument. But I want to get to the settlement part, but I just want to move to the initial push of the initiative. Fathers of Zionism, I don't know if people could comprehend this, but the anti-Jew hatred in Europe was worse than what you had at Palestine at that time. I'm not talking about all of the Islamic world, right? But Jews and Muslims, the minority Jews and Muslims lived in Palestine.
And Christians, yeah.
And Christians live in Palestine pretty harmoniously for a while, right? Before this
more harmoniously than they were in Europe.
Europe.
I wouldn't say it was. I wouldn't say it was smooth sailing, but
it was. I mean, it eventually. I mean, not to say that there wasn't they weren't getting shit from other Muslims. In fact, it was so bad from other Muslims that after World War II, the number of Jews coming to Israel, fleeing other countries, was the same number of people leaving Europe from Muslim countries. That shows you how bad it was in Muslim countries, that you get the same number of people running away from Muslims than you had in World War II from Europe. That tells you a lot about what the situation was in Islamic countries. But I don't know. I mean, Jews were hated everywhere. So this didn't seem, I mean, and this was an area that had a lot of empty land, right? I might have made the same mistake if I was trying to pick a kind of place for them to go. I might have made the same mistake. I mean, now we look at things. I mean, I'm not saying it's a mistake, but I'm just saying that it seemed like the best option at that time, right? Given everything, yeah.
Sure, but I mean, we can't say that there was absolutely pressure from religious Jews, who were looking for this. There was pressure from again, biblical prophecy for a lot of Christians, right? Is about how the Jews must return to Israel to the Holy Land, to the Promised Land, for Jesus to come back in Jerusalem. So that's also something that there was to consider. This was something, if you had the UN doing it, if the UN was mainly influenced by Western governments, then this is something that was inevitable. There was religious pressure, and there was other pressure as well to have it there. So I mean, we can't say that there was. So it had nothing to do.
If you cut this whole conflict into many different pieces, right? You have the people that are arguing about who has the right, and they go to ancient history and they talk about the fact that the Jews were here like thousands of years ago. That's the first line. The second line is the religious line. Then the third one is the when it comes to the British giving this land to the Jews without having the permission. The fourth line is the fact that the people that are saying, okay, fine, Israel has a right to exist, Palestine has a right to exist, but what the fuck, Israel? You took way more land than was agreed on in the United and the UN agreements, and then so that's I think the fourth, right? And then the fifth issue, which is something more people agree on, is the settlement issue, right? So So I think the first few ones that I mentioned was mostly about the right to exist. So which ones have the right to exist, because some people don't agree on that, right? Some people don't agree that Palestine should even exist. Some people don't think that Israel shouldn't even exist. So that's one area of argument. The other area of argument is Israel should go back to the borders that was agreed on based on the UN, which never going to happen, but that acknowledges both of their existence, but the borders needs to be changed. So that's the second part of the disagreements, which is completely separate for the first one. But the third one is mostly focused on the fact that even when we have Palestine today, even what we considered as Gaza Strip at Palestine today, the situation is that in the Gaza Strip is the conditions that the Palestinians are living under is horrific. And in the West Bank, you have settlements building in a place that everybody recognizes as Palestine and has not, like, even based on what Israel considers is Israel it should not be their land, right? So if you are on the Israeli side, what you would argue, which is actually legit, is that when they, first of all, when they won the war against all these Arab countries, it wasn't just Palestine, it was like everybody attacked them. Okay. All the Arab countries around them attacked them. And the fact that they won that seemed like a miracle. You have a nation that is a baby nation, right? That is not even walking, it can't even call itself a nation. And you have how many countries attacked it at the sixth? I forgot how many it was. But
yeah, I can't remember the number.
But they won that. So a lot of religious Jews are like, okay, God is how could we fucking win this war, right? God is definitely on our side, right? So they're like, and the problem is that for religious Jews, the West Bank area is the part of the Bible that was promised to them. That's the main part, right? Mm-hmm. So, those religious groups, they're political parties. Netanyahu currently, the Likud, actually needs them, to keep his coalition, to keep his power. So, but the initial settlement had nothing to do with the Israeli government. Okay, the religious Jews. And the reason why we know this is religious, because the initial settlements made absolutely no sense if you were just a normal Jewish Israeli citizen. Because you're leaving the safety of your own country and just walking into the middle of Palestinians, right? Like this makes, at that point, now it's a lot more secure, right? But at that time, it was what the fuck, right? Like you have your army there, you have a country there, and now you're basically openly walking into enemy territory, and you're like setting out shop and like, this is my home now, right? So the only way that made sense was for these people to think this is where the Torah promised us, this is where it's supposed to be, right? And another defense of Israel with regards to settlements is that they tried stopping the settlements and it didn't work. Like they say, first of all, it's really hard for the Israeli government to take out all these settlements initially, right? Because these were very, very religious people. They have a lot of voting power. It's political suicide for you to go remove them. And even though it was political suicide, they went and did that in the Gaza Strip, and the scenery was really a pure nightmare for Israel government. Like you had Israeli military soldiers going on and taking Jewish people out of their home, and it looked like when I was watching that, I was like, wait, are these Palestinians or like what? They are Israeli Jewish people that Israeli soldiers are pulling out of their houses. So they removed them.
You're talking about Gaza in 2005, right?
Right. So they moved all the settlements out of Gaza Strip. They pulled the Jews, the Israeli government with their soldiers, they pulled the Jews out of their houses and all the settlement stuff. There is no settlements in the Gaza Strip. It's only in the West Bank now. But look, did that improve things in Gaza Strip? No. Did the hostility against Israel get reduced after the settlement stopping in the Gaza Strip? No.
It said they elected Hamas.
They elected Hamas. In fact, it was a political nightmare for Israel's government because all the Jews around Israel were watching this. Were like, why is our government doing this to us? So they got all the cost of the political nightmare from stopping the settlement and none of the benefits that was promised to Israel, that if you do this, the violence is going to stop, the hostility is going to stop. None of that happened. So Israel like, why would I ever try that again? Why would I ever try that again? In fact, I'm going to pander to these people. I'm going to endorse it. I'm going to give discounts to the houses. This gets me votes. Why would I ever do that again? That was a nightmare for me, and I got no security out of it. So they will never do that. But and a lot of people will say, well, if you look at the Gaza Strip, a lot of people say, well, Israel is responsible for that because they have a full blockade on that area. This is like a apartheid state right now, and this is or they call it open prison and everything. They have so many different ways to describe it, but a lot of people don't know that this was Egypt's land at some point, right?
Well, no, Egypt still controls the southern border of Gaza,
and it's closed. And
it's closed, and right. they have a blockade on it, just like
right.
it. So if it is an open prison, it's not only because of Israel. And yes. I have to say, I am actually like most of the world, including most Western Jews, I find the situation in Gaza absolutely atrocious. I do agree with the open prison statements. I really think it's like that. I don't think that it's. I think the Israel blockade is responsible for it, but only partially. The Egyptian blockade is responsible for it, right. And most of all, I think Hamas. Hamas is a bigger enemy of the Palestinians than Israel could ever be, because Hamas has a completely different agenda than I think most reasonable Palestinians do. And I've talked to a lot of reasonable Palestinians who don't share the goals of Hamas.
You talk to the reasonable ones, but we have to admit that there is also a lot of support for Hamas among average Palestinians, right?
No, there is. Of course there is. And one of the reasons for that, and one of the reasons they got elected is because there is, for generations, not generations and generations, but for at least a couple of generations, they have been living under occupation. And, when you think of them as Palestinians living under occupation, there's a whole, you're like, oh, okay, Palestinians living under occupation, because you've seen it in the news all day. But if you just think of it as people living under occupation, that they're under the control of another government. We're not talking about the Hamas terrorists and everything. We're talking about regular people who are living there, under the control of another government without the right to vote, when their neighbors all have the right to vote and they're treated completely differently. That when you put yourself in that situation, right, even though it's not justified, you can't justify what's happening, but you can understand that, okay, when the Hamas people come out, they say, we'll give your family money, we'll give you your healthcare services. That this is the one thing about Hamas, is that they provide social services, whereas Fatah, which is relatively more secular in the West Bank, is completely corrupt. Right, and even though they don't have that this hardcore Islamist agenda, and they do try to have conciliatory, they do try to be a little bit more diplomatic with Israel, and they're trying to probably find a solution a lot more than Hamas is. Hamas is very organized, and they provide these people with social services, people who've been living under an occupation. They completely see everything through that lens. So. Those people who actually do, even though they vote for Hamas, they do it against their own interests.
But
right?
they don't know. I mean, and think about it.
But they are victims. They're still victims.
Yeah. I mean, think about you being like, when we see things from outside, we look at Hamas and we know what monsters they are, right? But imagine being born in Gaza. You see these, whoever is associated with Hamas are the people that are opening the schools, giving you medical treatment. Are the people that are handing out food, and the people that are called Israelis are the people that are reducing mobility, are the people that have with the constantly checking for your IDs, and you in that condition, it's easy to see why somebody would be pro Hamas. And again, explaining it does not mean excusing it, right? Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say one thing: Hamas is actually in this conflict. If anybody's winning it right now, long term, I would say right now it's Hamas. I think the current Israeli government...
Right now it's Iran and Turkey are winning this war, I think.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if we're talking about elements within there, because Hamas's strongest weapons, but there are two strong weapons. One is world sympathy, right? And the way they get the world sympathy is by civilian casualties in Israel. So yes, they do use them as human shields. There are videos out there for people who are in denial about this. There are videos of Hamas leaders asking people to take their children up on the rooftops when the Israeli planes come overboard. Right? There are videos of guys sending their children over of them. They've been in hospitals. They've actually had their bunkers where they attack in hospitals. This is all documented. The people deny this, but it's true. Hamas does use civilians as shields, and why wouldn't they? It gets them the sympathy of the world. The other thing that Hamas wants is a one-state solution. They want a one-state solution. Why do they want a one-state solution? Because a one-state solution is the end of Israel. Once you have a one-state, and bizarrely, Netanyahu and Avigdor Lieberman, his foreign minister, they want a one-state solution as well. They think that they can get away with it. Because what Israel has always prided itself on is that it's a Jewish state and it's a democracy.
I don't think so. What I think they both want is for things to be exactly like how it is right now with the current conflict. I think it's filling up their banks. This is. I think the status quo is.
I don't know. I don't. I think that when we look at it, the status quo definitely benefits. I think it benefits Hamas more. If you look at world opinion,
when you're talking about Israel, and we have to talk about who are we talking about in Israel, right? The status quo is really good for example, Netanyahu's government. It's really bad for.
I agree with that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and the status quo is really good for Hamas as well. The status quo is amazing for Iran. But we could get into that how other players later. But two things that you kind of Fatah was the people. They are the ones that turned the lights off on Gaza Strip. I mean, the government. The people. I don't know. I hope people.
Yeah. The Fatah and the Gaza and the West Bank issued the fact that they're fighting against each other. These governments, Hamas and Fatah, are fighting against like that. That is actually one of the most beneficial things to Israel there is as well.
Right, and they were. Yeah, so a lot of people don't know that a lot of also the problems in Gaza Strip is because the Palestinian government stopped paying salaries of the workers in Gaza Strip. On purpose to punish Hamas, just to bring people up to speed is the government of the official government that is recognized internationally. They mostly control the West Bank, right? Hamas mostly controls Gaza Strip, and there was a huge conflict recently between these two groups, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of the suffering that is experienced in Gaza Strip is also responsible because the government tried to shut down services to Gaza Strip as a punishment to Hamas. So this made the division even more. And again, people have to remember that Egypt, as you mentioned, Egypt closes its border on Gaza Strip as well, but nobody really mentions the fact. Mostly they talk about the blockade as if it's Israel. But what you were saying, regards to the settlement, I wanted to add, if you put yourself in a position of Israel as a politician, and think about like a political party that is trying to survive, not trying to be moral or anything, you'll find it very. I'm not saying they're being moral or not. I'm just saying just think about survival as the criteria, right? Uh-huh. You will definitely pander to the religious Jews, right? And the settlement is such a great way. So, for example, for anybody looking from outside, the settlements makes no sense, right? Everything, even if you're apt for everything else that Israel does. If you say yes, Israel has to do this because it has to defend itself. Israel has to do this because it's living in such a hostile environment. Israel has to do this because of this. But once you get to the settlements, then everything stops making sense until you look at everything from either religious perspective or pandering to a religious perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Because, there's two things about the settlements. First of all, almost every country condemns it. Okay, even Israel's best buddy, United States, every single president condemned it. Okay, since the birth of Israel.
Yeah, that's true. Republicans, Democrats, from like Lyndon Johnson to Ronald Reagan to George W. Bush, everybody was anti-settlements, and this was
even
people.
Even Trump was anti-settlement, right? So there's not a single U.S. president that has not been anti-settlement. And if anybody looks at it, it made no economical sense. There's nothing there that's worth having. It's such a security threat it's a political, internationally, it has devastated Israel's relationship with many countries. Economically made sense. So from whatever angle you look at it, it made no sense to do settlements, right? Except the fact that of the religious angle. And even if you're not religious, pandering to the religious, right? As a politician, and getting their votes. What, you're reading something?
Who, me?
No, yeah, I thought you saw something in the live chat that you wanted to talk about.
Oh, no, I'm just following along. But go ahead.
Another point, argument for the Israeli regarding the settlements, from the non-religious angle of it, is that the parts of the Palestinian areas in the West Bank that they are doing settlements, there was nothing there before. Like, they are basically going and building cities out of nothing, right? And they're like, nobody was there, and we're like, most of it is like that, right? But then people are like, that's not the issue. How could you ever have a two-state solution if you have self-run, autonomous Israeli pocket holes here and there, like that? We never have.
They don't want a two-state solution,
right?
A lot of
but they don't. Yeah. But here's the thing: I don't think they want a two-state solution, or they want a one-state solution. I think it's you have to understand that the security threats to Israel is really good for the right-wing arm of Israeli politics. Whenever their security threats gets higher, more people in Israel vote right-wing, right? So whether you have a one-state solution or a two-state solution, that's the fact is the solution might not be something that they're interested in. This for the right-wing Israeli government, this status quo security situation is fantastic, right? I'm not saying I come at all of Israel, okay? I'm talking about only certain elements within Israeli politics. And now Iran is also such a great security threat. See, you have to understand that Israel is great for Hamas, and Hamas is great for right-wing Israeli politics, right?
Yeah, I was going to say what Jim King just said. He said that, yep, the current situation is good for Hamas and the right wing in Israel. And this is what I completely agree with.
Yeah. Yeah. Live chat, I guess.
Yeah. So but let's talk about this. So I want to talk about what they call the demographic time bomb, and this to me it's fascinating to me because I always sometimes I talk about how Netanyahu is in a way even causing even more damage to Israel in the long run than Iran could, right? And what he's done several things. First of all, there hasn't been more antipathy towards Israel ever. I think at least when I was growing up, there was a lot of sympathy towards Israel from people in the West and people in Europe. But now even Jews in the United States and Jews in Europe, they're very, very uncomfortable with the kind of things that Netanyahu and Likud are doing and the way that Israel is conducting itself.
Well, not all of them. There's a lot of support.
But no, more than before. A lot more than before. So one of the biggest things, there's two major sort of clefts that Netanyahu's created. Okay, the first one is, I think everybody will recognize this, no matter what side you're on. Israel used to be a bipartisan, it was not an issue. Both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans in the United States, fully supported Israel pretty much unconditionally because that was the way that they were going to get votes. It was not a partisan issue. It was bipartisan. Every party agreed that, yes, we have to protect Israel, and we have to protect the right of Israel to exist and the right of Israel to defend itself.
Right.
So one of the things that Netanyahu did was during the Obama time is, even though Obama's policies were no different than his predecessors, he was against the settlements and all this other stuff, but he really antagonized him. And then he came in, he did that speech to Congress where a lot of the Democrats didn't attend and the Republicans were there. Netanyahu essentially took an issue that had bipartisan support, and he made it a partisan issue. He made Israel more of a Republican thing, and now more Democrats have backed off of it. So that's one cleft that he created, which is amazing to me, because why wouldn't you keep all of that support? Why would you divide it in half? The second thing he's done is that there is a massive cleft now, or a growing cleft at least, between...
Well, because he was responding to Obama. Obama was the first... there was a anti-Israel resolution in UN, and under Obama, it was the first government in US that did not veto that, and just it passed, and the UN.
That was towards the end. The entire time Obama was there, right? It was about the settlements. The entire time he acted exactly like all of his predecessors did. It's only towards the end, in his last couple of years in office, that he decided not to go with it, because he was so disgusted with the way Netanyahu was conducting himself. So this was that's not something he did. The policies that Obama had a a lot of foreign policy problems, right? He was very weak on a lot of things.
This is something that Syria, Trump, Obama, and Clinton agree with, okay? The anti-settlement stance is something that all of them agree with.
And that's what it was. So the U.S. would typically abstain.
Hillary Clinton agrees with this as well. Go on.
Right. So this time, it was towards the end that Obama actually it didn't do that. So this is one thing that he did. He divided the Democrats, and this was actually solely lies on Netanyahu's feet. There's nobody else who did this except for him. He did that to Israel. The second thing he did is, now that there is a growing cleft between the diaspora Jews, right? The majority of whom still vote Democrat, and the Israeli Jews, Netanyahu has a majority government. About 50% of them are against him, though. All right, so that's another thing that he did. The third thing is he's amped up the whole settlement expansion. He's got a guy like Avigdor Lieberman as his foreign minister, and he is going towards a one-state solution. So here's the thing: in that entire Israel and Palestine combined, right? There's approximately 50% Jews and 50% Arabs. Okay, that's how it is.
If you add up Palestine?
If you add up Palestine.
Okay.
If you take Palestine and you take the 20% of Israel that is Arab, right? The entire population of that supposing there was a binational single state, that would be 50%.
But before you say that, we have to make it clear. So the two-state solution separates give Palestine's autonomy, which looks completely impossible now with the settlements, because how could you have a country where so many different holes in it with the settlements in there, right? So the settlements makes the two-state solution almost impossible, right? The only other two alternatives is to keep having this status quo situation, or move into, which is not a solution at all, or have a one-state solution. There is no other options other than these three options, correct? Right? And this is why this is kind of scary for a lot of people, because the one-state solution is going to have the problem which Ali is right now explaining to us. Go on.
Yeah, so I was just going to say to Jim King, he was saying that, American support for Israel is at highest rates, but what we're talking about, the American Jews, the diaspora Jews, and who still overwhelmingly support Democrats. But you were moving into having one-state solution. Yeah. So here's what happens in a one-state solution. So you take the 20% of Arabs in Israel, you take all of the rest of the Arabs in Palestine, and now you have pretty much a 50-50. Right. The ratio between, you have Arabs 50%, Jews 50%. I think overall the Arabs are a little bit less right now, but they have a much faster reproduction rate, right?
Right.
That I think the conservative Orthodox Jews in the settlements are trying to catch up to, but they can't. So very soon, that population of Arabs in that entire landmass is going to be above 50%. Right. Now, if you have a single state, binational state, you have two choices. You can either give everybody the vote, and if you give everybody the vote, you stay a democracy, but you're no longer a Jewish state. You're just going to be the 51st Arab state, right? The 52nd state. Now, if you don't give them the vote, then you are an apartheid state, right? But you stay a Jewish state.
So you have two classes. So basically, you have now two classes of citizenship, right? So you have like Israelis and not like Israelis.
No. You don't even have two classes of citizenship, because now we're talking about a single state, right?
Yeah.
So in a single state, you just have one group of people that's going to be able to vote, and the other people who can't vote, because if they voted, it'd become an Arab state. So what you have is now the whole idea of it being a Jewish state and a democracy. The definition of Israel is now gone, because now it has to choose between either being a Jewish state by not and being an apartheid state, or being a democracy, in which case it's no longer a Jewish state.
And I don't think anybody wants that. Like
Hamas wants that.
No,
the BDS movement wants that. Like there are, because they know exactly what that's going to do. If you have a single state,
Hamas's eventual goal is to exterminate every fucking Jew.
This is how you do it. You don't have to exterminate every Jew. This is how you get rid of Israel. A single state, binational.
Yeah, this is why Khamenei is saying Israel is destroying itself. We don't even need to wage war against it.
And sadly he's right. Right. So a single state means Israel no longer exists as a Jewish democracy. It'll have to choose between either being a Jewish state or a democratic state.
Well, they say, well, okay, we're going to pick. So what's the problem if they say, okay, fine, apartheid states? One state.
Israel is already becoming a pariah in Europe. There is a rising anti-Semitism.
All right, so they have dealt with this international hate. So why not go all the way and just have like one state solution, but as Palestinians will live still in the same condition with no voting rights? Bring it on. Why can't they even do that?
It's not going to be, as Christopher Hitchens said, that's not something you can sustain for a long period of time in the 21st century, because economics doesn't work the way it used to before either, right? Economics is based on international relations. When they had in the 90s, when the euro currency was coming out and there was this little conflict of war in Yugoslavia or all those states, they had to go in. The Bosnian genocide had been going on for a couple of years, but that's when they went in, they fixed it, because now this is a globalized world. You can't have war, you can't have conflict, racism, because all of this stuff does not help the world economy. You isolate yourself if you do that. So even if it would work for a little while, and like it would help Likud survive for a little bit longer, it is not a long-term sustainable solution. It just isn't. So that's what we're dealing with. And it's amazing to me that Netanyahu and Likud is actually playing into its hands. And this is where Khamenei... do you think Iran wants a bomb? Do you think Iran will actually nuke
Well,
Israel?
we need to get to that. No, I don't think. I think they want. No, of course not.
So I'm just going to say, I know we're going to get to that later.
We get to that later. But when I say, of course not, people think like I'm saying, oh, Iran is not anti-Israel. No, because they're not suicidal. Okay, not because.
And they're going to kill more Palestinians. They're going to kill more Arabs.
Well, they don't give a shit about Iran. Doesn't give a shit about Palestinians. Iran wants the Palestinians to suffer because it's such a great tool. But we're gonna get to that soon. I just because we want to talk about the international aspects of this. But I just want to address Jim King is saying, or they will annex Area C and let Palestinians have Gaza and the areas of the thing is that the A, B, C areas in the West Bank where some parts is Israel, some parts is a gray zone, some where Israel is Palestinian, but Israel has military rights, and some parts is fully. The thing is that it's so messy that there, if Palestine, if the areas that Israel is not in the West Bank is now becomes Palestine, it will become the weirdest country in the world. Like it will be so mosaic, like it's it will not work. That could never work. I mean, even right now, without that, the mobility is the question. Like, imagine you having like your own country, and there's a whole pockets of many big pockets of areas within it that is another country. You know what I mean? And that country has full rights, full autonomy in all those pockets, and they have to build roads, direct roads from their main motherland to all of these, and and they can security check anybody wants to use these roads. They can have security check on all the people from the citizenship of the other country. So the fact is that these areas of Israel that exist, the settlements areas, when you build roads to it, then it cuts through the land. And if that's Israel's road, and they want to have full security check on that, that means that there is no way where the remaining areas could be a full functioning independent country. That's impossible.
Yeah,
right.
So there's a couple of other things I want to bring up here. So one last point on that the demographic time bomb that I was talking about, where it's only sustainable for a little while, is that suppose, so Armin, you were saying that what if, Israel says, okay, go ahead, we're going to be in an apartheid state, we're going to have a single state, and, we're just not going to give a lot of the Arabs the vote, right? So supposing that happened, and then Arabs started coming out every Friday after Friday prayers and just held up signs saying voting rights for us peacefully. Just came out and did Tahrir Square type demonstrations saying, give us a vote, give us a vote. And they started doing that every Friday. And that would be a disaster for Israel around the world. If that kind of thing happened, we're like, okay, no, we're not giving you the vote, even though we wanted the single state. It's going to be economic isolation, social isolation.
Well, I don't know. Israel says we have survived more hatred than that. We could survive more.
Yeah, I know. I don't think that a lot of remember, Netanyahu has had to form minority governments at times with the help of forming coalitions with other sort of far right-wing parties. There are a lot of people in Israel, right? In fact, probably over 50% who don't support him and who would be outraged by a situation like that themselves within Israel. So, that's one thing. The second thing you were talking about with the West Bank, all of the settlements and the map being really, really messy, is that this is something actually Majid Nawaz talked about. He was talking about how there are 20% of Israel is Arabs, right?
Right.
So even if they just forget about all the settlements and they say, okay, we're going to divide it into two parts, you'll have these Jewish settlements. Now they're just going to become Palestinian. They're going to be part of the Palestinian state, and Israel is going to have the Israeli state with a bunch of Arabs in it. So why can't we have that? Why do we have to divide it along Israel, Arab and Jewish lines?
No,
if there's Arabs that can. So he said that
because it's about the settlements. It's not about that. This is supposed, like, the religious Jews. First, initially, it was about the religious Jews saying that we need to be here. Okay, this is our promised land, right? So when initially it moved even without the endorsement of Israeli government. But then it became big business, right? And then it became big politics.
No, I understand that. But what he's saying is that if because people were saying it's too late now for a two-state solution because all the settlers will have to go back to mainland, like main Israel. But what he was saying is that if you split it down the middle, right, and we just let all the settlers, the Jewish settlers in the West Bank, they are now Palestinian.
Oh, that's
and the Arabs are Israeli.
No, that's ridiculous. You know why? Here's why.
Go ahead.
Because without Israel's security, they're going to be destroyed. Those Israelis living on Palestinians' lands are sitting ducks.
Right. So now here's the question. This is the tough question when we talk about.
This brings up a very good point, because Arabs could live peacefully in Israel, but for Israelis to live in Palestinian, you need one of the world's most advanced armies to be able for them to live there.
Now that is so some people would say that what you're doing is you're practicing the bigotry of lowered expectations, that Palestinians can't handle Jews living among them, but the Jews can handle 20%.
Okay, fine, but that's reality. But that's the truth.
I know.
That's the truth.
I know. And it's uncomfortable, and I don't like it, and I feel queasy about it, but it's fucking true. And this is and
in fact, Arabs living in Israel are safer than Palestinians living in fucking Palestine. Okay, that's how different the difference.
Well, the first country ever to give Arab women, the first country in the world where Arab women got the right to vote, was Israel.
Right.
Yeah. So that's
the difference is huge.
I think a lot of people might be confused about whether we're pro-Israel right now or pro-Palestine. We're like ping-ponging back and forth.
Okay, so here's the difference between how far ahead in Israel is compared to its neighbors is huge. And when we point to all the mistakes that Israel has made, people keep pointing that out and be like, well, it's not even close. Yeah, well, are you not gonna point out to Israel's mistake? Because I could do that with any other country, right? If I ever point to Iran's human rights record, then somebody can be like, well, North Korea, blah, 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 right? So like what, right? North Korea is way worse than Iran. North Korea is way worse than Iran. So what? So does that mean I can't point to Iran's problems?
Yeah, but you know what's happening here, though, is that Israel kind of suffers from bigotry of higher expectations. So
it's not because we're not. It's not like we're excusing one for the other. You know what I mean?
It's not. But what happens is that people the reason that people, when Israel does shitty things, and Israel does a lot of shitty things. When they do shitty things, then people think because they hold Israel to a higher standard for the same reason that you're saying. There's so much that these people are one of us. They're an advanced country. They're a developed country like us. Why are they acting like all of those those rogue Arab dictators? Why are they doing that?
Well,
right? So that becomes so even if what Israel is doing is not as, obviously, it's not as bad as what Omar al-Bashir did. It's not even a fraction as close to what
the answer to that would be because no other country is so surrounded by hostile countries. That's the answer, right? And in fact, Israel has gone out of its way. This is the answer that people give to keep bringing up agreements, making new proposals, which to every single one of them, the other side has said no, right? And then they would say that even when which other advanced country throughout history wins war and captures lands and willingly gives it away as a sign of peace, like Israel has done even that, right? So, and even when we stopped settlement, we didn't get rewarded for it. We got even more hostility. So they will be like, no, not only we are better not only we are same as other advanced countries, we are even better. They would say, imagine if Iran and United States were neighbors. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Imagine if United States had three neighbors, and the three neighbors were North Korea, Iran, and Russia. Okay. Right. Russia or current Russia, or Russia had the Cold War. They're like, do you think that the United States would be acting the same way it does right now? Like, no. Like, so that's the excuse that Israel has, right? But again, sorry, I interrupted you. You wanted
No, go ahead. It's fine.
But again, this you can't. A lot of when people say, "Oh, are you pro-Palestine or pro-Israel?" I mean, I'm pro-people, right? So, and it's better to say, are you pro-settlement or anti-settlement, right? Are you pro Hamas or anti-Hamas? I can't even.
There's so many. It's weird that we talk about. It's so strange to. I always found even terms like pro-American.
Yeah.
I like why would you align yourself completely with one? How can you be pro or against a country? Like, like Israel and Palestine, we always talk about it that way. But does anybody pro Sweden, or even if when I think of some people talk about pro America, there's a lot of amazing. If you're talking about the humanitarian stuff that American citizens do overseas more than the people of any other country in the world, then of course you can be pro American. If you talk about a lot of the there's so many things. But if there are many things where you don't agree, you either agree with certain policies or you don't.
But
so it's really strange that like Israel and Palestine, they're very unique in that sense that people always talk about. I'm pro-Israeli, pro-Palestinian. And sorry, Armin, I just want to quote one thing, and this is something that I tweeted some time ago when the recent violence erupted at the Gaza demarcation line. So I wrote this. I said, and this is exactly how I feel. That can you be both pro-Israel and pro-Palestine? Yes, if you support secularism, democracy, and a two-state solution, and you oppose settlement expansion, the terrorism of Hamas, and the Israeli occupation. Yes, you can be both pro-Israel and pro-Palestine, and that's the thing.
What I can say is I'm pro so many things coming out of Israel. I'm pro the fact that they're such a no other country in the world is, like as I mentioned, is such a source of scientific achievements, technology, I think we're going to be indebted to Israel when we're in shortage of water. The whole planet is going to be indebted to Israel because they're so ahead of everybody else when it comes to getting fresh water out of the sea or whatever. And that's going to there's so many things that comes out of Israel that most people don't know they're benefiting from. And so you could say, like, I'm pro so many Israeli things, right? And I'm against a lot of other Israeli things that may be decisions. One thing that scares the shit out of me when it comes to Israel is the fact that the religious right in Israel seems to be getting more and more influential in politics, right? Even more than before. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it seems like it, and that's scary.
Well, they are. Go ahead.
Right. No, go ahead. I was just shaking if I...
I was just saying, I think one of the biggest problems right now that I'm having with the current Israeli government, and again, that's also very different. The way that Israel is, right, and the way that what the current Israeli government is doing, which I think that if you are pro-Israel, and if you're looking for long-term, growth and long-term, a healthy evolution of Israel as a state, in the long term, I think it's very, very difficult to be pro-Likud and pro-Netanyahu. Right. But one of the things that he has at least made me do, I mean, apart from the whole splitting up Democrats and Republicans and, reducing support of Israel and all of the stuff that's happening, is that he has he's openly antagonized the U.S. And I am much more in line with U.S. policy on Israel than I am with what Israel's doing. And when you're in a position where I'm like, okay, well, am I going to support Israel? Am I going to support what the U.S. is trying to do? And the U.S. has certain policies that are in place, bipartisan policies, like on settlements, like their view on the occupation, like the view on the two-state solution, that when you antagonize it, a lot of I'm hearing this more and more from American Jews, is that, hey, I'm being asked to choose if I support Israel or I support America. And that never really used to be a problem because they were aligned. Right.
Mike is asking, Armin is saying about many good things coming from Israel. Is there anything good coming from Palestine? Honestly, not much.
No, there. Yeah,
I mean, and you could blame that on Israel, but you could also blame that on fucking Palestine itself. I mean, look at their government. Look at both Hamas and Fatah. They
fighting with each other.
They fucking suck. They suck at their own internal stuff. Even if you look at stuff when it comes to running, even if you eliminate the stuff that has got to do with their own self-governance, stuff that Israel has nothing to do with, if you look at how they manage things, if you look at their own internal relationship, they suck at government. Like, they are, whatever problems they have, and you put at the feet at the Israeli government, there's also shitload of problems that Israelis have to deal with that you could put at the feet of their own bad management and their own internal conflict. Can we talk about the recent events and the protests against that happened at the border with regards to...
Yeah, let's do that. So we've got a half an hour, and let's talk about that, and let's also kind of talk about the Iran deal. I just want to address anthropogenesis. You're saying, is Linda Sarsour paying you guys tonight? If she was, she would be very disappointed. I know you don't believe that, but
wait, what? We've been shitting on Palestine, both Palestinian governments.
No. So, but I wanted to add. I don't know how much I missed while I got disconnected, but I think that one of the things with the Palestinians, I've met Palestinians who have come here from there that are so talented. I mean, I had a friend from Gaza who I did my fellowship with. He's a molecular genetic pathologist, and he's super, super smart. There's so much they could do. I mean, the people who've come out of there, there's a lot of talent. They're human beings just like everybody else. There's some brilliant people there. There is, because of the conflict and because of all the bullshit there, which I think that is a fault of circumstances, a fault of Hamas. It's a fault of the occupation. It's a fault of all of this other stuff that's happening. You don't see it that much. So I think you would see a lot of good coming out of Palestine as well. At some point, if the situation got better. I mean, they're people just like everybody else. Right? They're just victims of a situation that's really, really shitty, and that the causes of which are not as simple as, the powerful is beating up the oppressed. No, it's a lot of it is actually because of the government that they elected themselves in Hamas.
Yeah, I mean, come on, guys. They are responsible for the Gaza Strip people are responsible for electing Hamas. Okay, so that tells you a lot. And a lot of people say, Palestinians want to do peaceful protests. That's just Hamas. We're not supporting Hamas. We're supporting the Palestinian people. People should know that in Palestine, there's a lot of support for Hamas, and even among people that are not pro-Hamas, Jew hatred is so fucking common. Okay?
That's like it's all over the Arab world. Actually,
no,
this is the thing.
Even more even way more than the rest of the Arab countries that there is in Palestine. Okay,
yeah.
The fact that if you're a Jew, you deserve to suffer and die, even if you're a fucking kid, is. So I'm not saying all Palestinians, not all, okay? But that is such a common view.
And that's
if you're Israeli, you need that one day all Jews will have to die. They all have to be killed. They all have to suffer. All of Israel needs to be punished. Men, women, and children. That's such a common view, okay? And and a lot of it comes from religion. A lot of it comes from, and something that people, when they point to politics and real estate and to say that this is not religion, it's all of that, okay? The thing is with religion is that whenever religion is a problem, it's never alone. Religion just makes a bad situation way worse. It's never.
Very good point. Yeah.
Right. It's not always it's usually not the only thing that is causing the conflict. It just makes the conflict way more difficult to solve, and makes the emotions way more difficult, and makes every resolution almost impossible. That's what religion does. It just go on.
Yeah, no, I was saying at the heart of it, at the origin of it, it is a religious conflict, but it's gone on for so long that everything, economics and human rights and politics, everything's come into it. And the religion, again, is especially Abrahamic religions, especially these two, Judaism and Islam, are inherently political.
Right.
But it's like when a snowball's rolling down a hill, right, and it collects snow and becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. If you reverse that, and you took it, there's all these big issues, and okay, well, this atrocity happened. Well, that happened in response to this. Well, that happened in response to that. That happened, and you could trace it back all the way. But if you roll that snowball back up the hill in reverse, what you'd end up with right at the top of the hill would be the religious conflict.
Right.
That's the way that I look at it.
Well, and another thing is that this idea of that all Jews need to die is way more common among Palestinians than any idea of all Arabs need to die among Israelis. Okay.
Yeah, and not to say that doesn't. I mean, this idea that people in government. Avigdor Lieberman has talked about beheading Palestinians. He's talked about drowning them all in the sea.
You have to look. Man. You have to really look to find something like that. Okay?
No. Here's the thing.
In Palestine, if you drop me in Palestine, I could point to people, and I would possibly. It's a very high chance that I got one of those people that wants all the Jews to die. Okay. And, go ahead.
I think so. Here's where I disagree with. I don't think you have to look really hard. I think it's definitely a lot less common, dramatically less common in Israel. But there are enough prominent people in Israel who've talked about how you've got to exterminate these Palestinian kids when they're young because they're snakes and they're going to grow up. And the people, their own government officials have talked about drowning them. All the Palestinians about beheading.
Every time something like that happened, became huge controversy.
It did. That's the difference.
But the difference is in Palestine, it would be more. You have to find the ones that are not like that and highlight them.
But they would also say, then again, the counter argument in this, and this is something I don't completely agree with it, but I do see why they say it. The counter argument here is, well, we're the ones who are living under occupation. We're the ones who are
right. But that's and again, that's an explanation, but not an excuse. So
no,
the thing is that is the Gaza Strip is like perfect breeding ground for that kind of viewpoints, right? So. And again, we understand it, not that we accept it, but we understand why it would be why that kind of average viewpoint would be even more than other Islamic country, right?
Right. And I do think this is and this is going to be controversial, and I'm going to get shit for this, but you get shit for anything that you say about this issue. But I do think that first of all, there's genuine the terrorism, the anti-Semitism that drives Hamas. Okay, so I wouldn't hesitate for a second in calling Hamas a terrorist group. But I think that there is a difference between people who are terrorists and people who are insurgents, right? Who are responding to, okay, you've got control over me and I'm going to fight back. So there is a mixture of that. And I think one side thinks that all of them are just fighting for their freedom and they're just all insurgents. They're not terrorists. And on the other side, they say, well, all Palestinians are terrorists. And all of them, okay, but they're not. And Armin, sorry, one last thing on this. I think when you say that, okay, they all voted for Hamas, again, when I do think that that's an atrocity, the fact that Hamas was elected, the majority of them voted for it. But when people are in desperate situations, a lot of times when they're in very desperate situations and they don't have a lot of other options, then they vote for people who are giving them food, who are giving them money, it's like people who who are giving them security, right? And that's what happens.
Like the mob.
Yeah, like the mob. I mean, people do, and a lot of these people. If you have people who are wealthy, like a lot of wealthy people who have a lot of money and they're like, I want to keep more of my taxes, they vote Republican. This is different from that. This is a thing where, you're constantly under threat. You're in some of the worst poverty in the world. You don't have opportunities. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. When you're in that situation and a really fucking shitty group comes up and says, okay, here's hundreds of dollars for you and your family. Here's free healthcare. And here we're going to give you a bunch of sandwiches for the week, for your kids. Then it becomes then it's a matter of survival. And
but a lot of terrorist groups use a PR strategy like ISIS did
because and I know they do. And the thing is that it works. Yeah. And then a lot of people do get oppressed by it. A lot of people do suffer for it. But their situations are so dire. Right. And their situations are so desperate, and they're so desperate to survive. I mean, you have a kid.
And you have to understand that if me and you were born in the Gaza Strip, this level of nuance and this level of looking at everything from a top level, I mean, it would be. I mean, even when they find those few ones that haven't been this dogmatized, it's kind of surprising that with all the shit they're going through. They have not that this is a good excuse, but I'm just saying this is a perfect condition for you to build religious and political extremism. Right?
They asked Ehud Barak, right? They had asked Ehud Barak. He said, "What would you do if you were a Palestinian living in Gaza?" I'm paraphrasing something like that, and he replied and he said that I'd probably join a terrorist group.
Right.
He said, I don't know if he was joking what he was saying, but this is something that, again, it's never an excuse, right? None of the stuff, the suicide bombing, killing civilians, all that, it's all bullshit. It's not an excuse. It's horrendous. It's outrageous. But
in Gaza Strip, like half of the people there have just lost willingness to live at all. Okay. Like their conditions. And when you lose your willingness to live, isn't this whole moral judgment thing, or whether we should, like, they all go out the window, right? You don't give a shit. If you're going to die, you might as well take a few people with you to think. I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying this is the kind of thinking, like, that me and you sitting here might have these views because we have the luxury of sitting here and being able to discourse this from a safe area, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how I would be thinking.
I'll draw more relatable.
If my child or my parents were killed by somebody else, I think that all objectivity would be completely lost at that point.
It's not. That's the thing. It's not. It won't be objectivity. And I'll give you just a quick other parallel is that when I was in Pakistan, we used to drive. One of the ways to if a guy stops you for speeding, a cop stops you for speeding, everybody knows you can just give him a bribe of like 50 or 100 rupees, right, and they'll let you go. Right. And people looked at that as corruption. They're like, well, our police force is corrupt. No, well, it's more complicated than that. A lot of these policemen, they were getting paid pretty much like minimum wage. And they have kids to support. They have their wives. They're supporting their parents. And then there's an extended family system. Sometimes they're supporting their wives' parents on that one salary. So when that spoiled rich kid is going a little too fast and offers him more money than he'd ever get for his salary just for writing the kid a ticket, he'll take the money for purposes of survival. And that's where morality and judgment and everything becomes secondary. So this is an experience that I think you can understand if you have a lot of.
Well, can we talk about the recent protests? Because that was the entire reason why we started this. The recent protests at the border, right?
Yeah.
With the tires burning and the snipers shooting.
I know, I think that this part will probably be quick because it's just a sort of a rehash of something that's happened a long time before, and I think we've covered a lot of that anyway. But yeah, let's talk about this. A lot of this has to do. The biggest controversy, Armin, and I'll ask you this, is that Trump moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, which I think is a dumb thing to do. But on the other hand, Jerusalem was always the de facto capital of Israel anyway, right? It's always functionally acted that way. So the U.S.
Well, I mean, it's dumb depending. It's not really dumb depending on your objective, right? If you think about his objective being pandering to the Christian,
that's why I'm saying it's dumb. I don't think, like, again, as I'm saying, de facto. Like Jerusalem has always acted as Israel's capital. It's not really like Tel Aviv. Jerusalem always had more going for it than that. So everybody's kind of looked at Jerusalem unofficially as a capital anyway. What he did was he just kind of made it official, which had a lot of symbolic value. So I think that's the thing. His intention for it is that's when you call it when you look at.
The intention for it is that delivering on the campaign promise, which makes him look like a hero among his followers, right? It has nothing to do, there's no amount of calculation, I think, that goes into that on what effect it's going to have on foreign affairs. I don't think that even matters. I think it's most of this administration's decisions is based on internal politics and the consequences be damned when it comes to foreign policy.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So now these people in Gaza, they go up to the border, which is actually more of a demarcation line, and they go and they start protesting, and there are many of them. And the Israel uses tear gas on them.
Don't they do this every year? But this year was just like this is the anniversary, by the way, of the Jewish of state being the birth, right? Like
Nakba.
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. That was the day after. I think the protest was the day after the anniversary. So the embassy opening was the anniversary. The protest was the catastrophe, the anniversary of the catastrophe, which is kind of the day after, I think, right? I don't know. But I think I think this year it was just more popular. I'm not sure though, because of the embassy reallocation. But go on.
Yeah, that was so Israel, they used tear gas, they opened fire, they did all of that. On the other side, of course, there were Hamas people, there were the people using their videos of this guy actually pretty much using his kid as a human shield. I mean, all the usual stuff that you see every time this kind of thing happens. You've got, Hamas people essentially celebrating it, all of that, because every time they have weaponized dead children, they've weaponized world sympathy. That is their strongest weapon, and that's how they win. And on the other hand, there was recklessness, as usual, on the part of Israel in terms of being, deliberate. They don't deliberately target civilians, but there's so many civilians that are in the area.
Are you sure? Because a lot of people are saying that. How could you say, because they did shoot the snipers, and they actually said that we know where every single bullet landed. Right?
Okay. So let me backtrack on that. Okay. There was a recent law, I think, the last couple of weeks, and I'm sorry if there's anybody who knows about this. Please correct me on the details if I get them wrong. There was a resolution that was proposed in Israel about whether the IDF should be allowed to fire at civilians, right? And they rejected it. That they should not be able to fire at civilians, and they rejected it, which means that Israel has essentially said that no, we're not going to put any.
It's really hard to tell who's a civilian sometimes, but go on.
Right. It is, but that's something that you got to do, right? something you got to do. But that's not news. It's like, well, we can't tell, so fuck it. But anyway, it's official policy where they have actually allowed them to fire at civilians because they
haven't allowed them or allowed them.
But they have allowed them. Let me actually look it up so I don't just continue to babble about this.
Okay, while you're looking it up, I'm gonna say from the Israeli position, they're looking at the world and they think the world is angry because they're shooting at people, and from the Israeli side, they say, what the fuck are you talking about? The rest of the world, which other country would not shoot at people that are actively marching towards this border with the intent of crossing it? What they're actually saying that we want to come back home and all that words, right? So whether that's what they're saying. Again, you could argue it's supposed to be their home and that's how you get it. This is peaceful protest. Then the argument is it's not actually protest because there's a whole bunch of Hamas in the middle of them. Some people say it wasn't. Some people say we actually have records of Hamas saying that they're going to be there. Wasn't there a Nazi flag?
Yeah, there was a Nazi flag. They're just fucking. But it's just. I sometimes think, have you seen Bruno, the movie Bruno?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, there's this, when he goes and he just trolls the Israelis and he trolls the Palestinians, and it pissed off a lot of people in the region in that movie. But I think he's the only guy who treated this situation with the respect it deserves, because this really is just about, it's amazing that the amount of violence is happening. But I found just to be clear to people,
the people from the Palestinian states that were marching towards the Israeli border, supposed to be a peaceful protest, right? And that's the reason why people are angry with Israel, because they're shooting at peaceful protesters. The Israelis said, first of all, they say they're not peaceful protesters. They were fucking Hamas in there, and they're flying a Palestinian flag next to a swastika. What is the message there? Okay, because they're which part of Nazi ideology do you think these people that are flying the Palestinian flag that are coming to our border, which part of it do you think they're endorsing? Do you think they're talking about Hitler's support of socialism? Which of all the elements about Hitler do you think the anti-Russian stand, the anti-communist stand? No. The part of the Nazi ideology that these people are referring to when they're flying a Nazi flag next to the Palestinian flag from the people that are marching towards us is the fact that they are endorsing extermination of all Jews. These are the people that are coming to our border. Loads of them are walking towards our border, and they are flying a flag that's openly communicates the fact that they want to kill Jews. Okay? And then which other country would not shoot at this? Okay? That's the defense. Go on, sorry.
No, I agree with that. I think that it's a tough situation, but I mean, there is, when you see some of these stories that are coming out, and this is the thing. It's a really, really hard thing to assess. That medic that was killed, what was her name? Razan Ashraf al-Najjar, the 20-year-old. She was helping, people who were injured there. There's so many, stories of these people who've been killed, the children that have been killed, and it's hard not to feel for it. But then on the other hand, so I found the report where the High Court, there was a petition that was against the U.S. Army's, the Israeli Army's rules of engagement. And they had basically said that the Israeli army should not fire at civilians, and the High Court in Israel struck it down because it said that the IDF will learn lessons from the high number of casualties and look to use more non-lethal methods. That was kind of what they said, which is it's really strange sounding. I don't know what's behind it. I think that maybe they're trying to say that we only do it as a last resort, but we're exploring non-lethal methods, but we're not going to tell our IDF soldiers to not fire at civilians. All right, so this is something that has been pretty contentious as well.
But and from the other side, the Palestinian people that are supporting Palestine, they would say, look, This was by large peaceful protests. They were not supporters of Hamas. It's really hard for us not to like Hamas. Like, how could we like not let Hamas join the protest? Of course, there might be some elements of Hamas in there, but this is as close as you can get to a peaceful protest. And the IDF itself said that every single bullet that landed, we know exactly where we landed, and it was intentional. So if we hit children, how many children? You know?
Oh, I don't know the count.
So if it hit the press, if it hit the journalists, if it hit the children, if it hit doctors, so they must know that they were hitting people that were not armed combatant. So how could you support that, right? Then a lot of people. Another thing is that whatever the snipers did at that in that protest, are you going to basically get that? You know, that's are going to attribute that to all of Israel. You know what I mean? If the people from the Palestinian side are some of them are trying to separate themselves from Hamas and be like, look, we're not supporters of Hamas. We're just Palestinians that are pro-peaceful protests. Okay. So if you don't want to be mixed with Hamas, then how come you are mixing those sniper shooters with all of Israel? Right. You could also argue that.
Yeah. As usual, there's your devil's advocate. You know how you do, Armin, you do the devil's advocate thing? Like, okay, I'm going to be devil's advocate. Well, this is basically the kind of devil's advocate situation where there's no end. You keep going on and on and on and on and on.
Right.
You know, and there's no way. And no matter what you say, everyone's going to be mad at you. Everyone's going to take little clips of this.
The thing with the reason why this is a conflict that has taken so long and probably will continue for so long is that ending this conflict only benefits a few people, which is the Palestinian people and the Israeli people.
That's it.
But keeping this conflict benefits a lot more people in power, okay? A lot more countries are banking on this conflict. And this is why it keeps on going, right? Iran is benefiting from this conflict, right? A lot of weapon sales, again, this is not conspiracy theory, okay? These are people with a lot of lobbying power within many countries, which is a tense situation, not outright wars, but tense situation, keeps everybody wanting to do a arms race and keeps everyone's pockets full. Okay, this is not conspiracy level stuff. This is how politics works. There's and again, it's not all of it, but it's a powerful element in it. Something that is changing recently is some Arab countries are not benefiting from it because Iran is benefiting from it. So some things are changing. For example, Saudi Arabia.
That's actually a big change.
That's a huge change because Saudi Arabia is now openly supporting Israel because of Iran, which shows you how big of a threat Iran is in this region, which the only thing that gets Arabs and Jews in bed together is the threat of Shias. But the fact that Saudi Arabia is now becoming closer to Israel is something Iran loves, okay? Because a lot of these Sunni Arab leaders are now getting closer and closer with Israel without their population actually being closer to Israel, right? So these are Arab Sunni dictators where their own population is very much pro-Palestine, right? And Iran loves highlighting that. Iran loves highlighting the fact that to the people of these other countries that now Iran's government is one of the only main countries other than Turkey. Turkey is mostly symbolic, that is pro-Palestinian. And Iran needs that right now because Hezbollah used to be very, very popular. Hezbollah is Iran's Shia arm in Lebanon and everywhere else in the fucking Middle East. But Hezbollah got a huge nosedive in popularity after their support for Assad, right? Because Sunnis fucking hate Assad and Hezbollah support of Assad. Hezbollah used to be very popular because it was anti-Israel, right? But now, because they supported Assad, it didn't show up. But now recently they won the election in Lebanon, so I think that everything is back to normal again. But now with the fact that all these Sunni leaders are getting close to Israel, Hezbollah is also becoming a popular force to support against Israel, especially because Hamas's popularity has been gone down because of their lack of ability to govern, right? And Hezbollah should learn from that, because Hezbollah now, so Hamas won an election, and that was catastrophic for them, because once you now when you have to blow shit up, right, people would cheer for you. But now when you have to manage a government, I think you'll find that that's more complicated than just getting money from people and blowing shit up, right? So Hamas learned that the hard way. I wonder if now Hezbollah that won the election, if they can't deliver on their promises in Lebanon, if they're going to suffer the same fate in Lebanon. But what do you think? I'm going on for two.
I agree with all of that.
Right.
I actually think it's changed quite a bit. I think the Hezbollah, and Hezbollah were, by the way, they were heroes in 2006 because they actually got
what?
that was probably one of the most successful offenses against Israel from any Arab entity ever. And it's really interesting because a lot of Shia, and they have a lot of support with Palestinians and pro-Palestinian people. So one of the reasons I've talked about,
just to be clear, it's very hard for you to be a Shia entity and win so much support among Sunni people. And the way you do that is by being a greatest force against Israel. That's how you do it. But go on.
That's how you do it. And the other thing to their advantage, minor advantage, was that they're Arab, right? Hezbollah is like the Arab arm, Shia arm of Iran. So, and I've said this before here as well, is that, Iran, they can't turn Arabs into Persians, but they can turn Sunnis into Shias. And that's the one thing that they really want to do. And that has a lot to do with their situation or their stance on Israel. So when you had Ahmadinejad and you had all these other sort of people in Iran, holding.
I don't know if they want to turn Sunnis into Shias. I think they go to Shias and they make Shias pro-Iran.
Get support from Sunnis, right? To just have mass numbers. So one of the things that they do, as Armin said, even though a lot of these Arab dictators are making deals with Israel and working with Israel, and Egypt did it before, and a lot of the Egyptian population was not happy about it because a lot of the Arab people tend to not like the Jews and definitely not like Israel. So when Ahmadinejad actually comes up and or some of these Iranian leaders come up and they say we want to wipe Israel off the map, or that holding Holocaust denial conferences and things like that, then a lot of these Arab people who don't like Israel, they look at that guy. They're like, oh, look at that guy. He has the balls to stand up to Israel, and our dictator, our leader's working with him. So that's a way for Iran to actually sow some discord within the Arab populations and have I guess get them to be a little have some antipathy towards their leader. So that's actually also a regional political move that's very complicated.
It's the only people need to understand. After World War I, it wasn't United States and the Middle East. Believe it or not, they had a good relationship. Okay, a lot of people saw United States as a better ally than the United Kingdom, because they thought United Kingdom was too imperialist. And they saw United States as less meddling, more pro-human rights, more a foreign entity that comes and treats you like a partner rather than like a boss, right? So United States was, for a while, seen as a great partner to Middle Eastern, like people don't know, but it's hard to believe that right now. But before 9/11, the main two things that turned that relationship around, the relationship that we're familiar with as like anti-US views, was mostly for two reasons. One smaller reason, because it was mostly focused on Iran, was United States support for Shah. And the bigger reason was United States support for Israel. This has been the main rallying cry that has been given birth to most of the hostility towards United States all across the Middle East. And because gave birth to it.
Oh, in Pakistan too, all this stuff. The U.S. is just, they're controlled by the Jews.
And it's been constantly been used as the most reliable go-to excuse for everything anti-West. And even 9/11 was mostly about United States support for Israel, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't that in the letter, like in the whole. So this tiny little land and this tiny little conflict. I mean, it's not tiny, but it's tiny compared to other other geopolitical hostility and other geopolitical. I mean, the number of people that die in Yemen is way more than the number of Palestinians that die. The conflict that we have all across the world many of them is way bigger than this. But this has this has been the source of much of the other conflict. Even Russia, Turkey, even China, like a lot of the geopolitics of many other countries that don't even seem relevant gets tied into this. Europe's hostility with United States sometime. I mean, even right now, the main hostility between Europe and the United States is over the Iran deal, and Iran's deal's hostility with the U.S. goes back again. The main drum that they keep banging on with regards to being anti-West always goes back to Palestine, which is amazing. I mean, the fact that this has been such a reliable way of getting people's emotions and getting people to support you or getting people to hate different entities based on their position to this conflict, right? But sorry, go on. I will keep talking too.
Yeah, no, I think that kind of, again, I agree with you completely there. But let's move on to, because I want to do this. Let's spend another 20 minutes or so we don't keep everybody up too late on the Iran deal, because
20
that's
minutes
one
on
thing.
the Iran deal. I think we need equal time that we spend on Palestine and the Iran deal. Okay.
Do you want to do another episode on the Iran deal?
No, because we promised the Iran deal to people on this one.
So yeah, let's because
okay, go on, dude.
Yeah, I think so. So one of the things that happened here is, and this is related in a way, because Iran is obviously a huge player in this entire conflict.
Right.
This is something that Israel was also involved in. I mean, Israel has been lobbying for a very long time to cancel this Iran deal. They don't like it. Netanyahu. It's a bad deal. It's a bad deal. Trump says the same thing. This Iran deal was basically a deal that was negotiated by Secretary of State John Kerry during the Obama administration, and it was an attempt to contain Iran's nuclear program. And it wasn't just a U.S.-Iran deal. There were several other European countries.
Can I answer Jim's? Mike is asking, what is Lebanon's stance in the conflict? Well, Lebanon has many different parts. The Mike is asking, but the Hezbollah is obviously anti-Israel. And Jim is asking, so Al-Qaeda's main, because I said Al-Qaeda used Palestine as the main reason to be anti-U.S. Jim is asking, so not the U.S. troop in Saudi Arabia, Al-Qaeda. Yes, I think that was the original.
That's what they started with.
But that's not their major PR marketing stuff. When it comes to the Muslims around the world for why they should be the U.S., they don't go to them and say because U.S. Troops are in Saudi Arabia. That was the initial things that motivated Bin Laden. But that's not the marketing that they use to the rest of. I mean, they do talk about it.
Yeah, they don't give a fuck about the Israel-Palestine conflict, but they use it in order to drum up their support for what they want to do is drive the infidel out of Muslim lands.
All right, sorry to interrupt. Go back. Okay, continue.
Yeah, so the Iran deal was negotiated between all of these countries and Iran, right? And it was about essentially containment of Iran's nuclear program, and it was actually working. So Iran was complying. Everything else was okay. That they lifted sanctions on Iran. There was internally there was a disagreement between the hardliners. The hardliners were not fans of the Iran deal, just like Trump.
Except Khamenei. He was convinced. He was convinced. Yeah.
Oh, he was convinced, but I don't know how much he was.
He was convinced.
Okay.
It wouldn't have happened if he wasn't convinced. But go on.
Yeah.
But he regrets it now. Go on.
Well, yeah. But the reform, the so-called quotes in reform, people actually wanted the Iran deal to happen. So when it happened, everybody was pretty happy about it, except for people like Donald Trump, the Republicans, and so on. They didn't like it because they thought that they're kind of giving Iran just a leeway to develop a nuclear weapon over time after 10 years, and they didn't think that they were going to stick with it. But there wasn't really any other alternative. Now, here's the thing: when deals happen, there's usually a lot of negotiation. So in hindsight, it took over a year, I think. And so in hindsight, you can always look at it and you can say, well, this deal is not good enough. Well, the deal, of course, is not going to be good enough because it's a deal. You went in with what you wanted, everything that you wanted, and then they turn around, they say, well, we're not going to have this. And then you go back and forth and you come up with something that, each side is okay with, but each side is also very dissatisfied with. And that's the nature of how deals happen. That's the definition of a deal. So what Trump did was he has canceled the deal. People say he pulled out of the deal. Well, it's not something you can pull out of. You actually, if you break the deal and you say, I'm not doing it anymore, you're actually violating it or canceling it. So that's what he did, and we don't have an alternative for it right now. So my position is I always supported the deal. I thought it was a good idea. I thought the containment was a good idea. I think that one of the reasons that this deal was negotiated was a way to buy time, and buying time in the sense that there are a lot of cracks in the Iranian clerical establishment. The Iranian population is by far the population of the people in Iran are by far the most sort of pro-secular, even pro-Western Muslim populations in the world. And the idea was for them to sort of grow up and for them to have some time before the situation there stabilized. There have been many you had the 2009 Green Revolution, you had a couple of years ago, or actually just last year, you had massive protests in Iran as well. So there are a lot of internal things that are happening there where often the U.S. is tempted, and many times the U.S. does go and side with the protesters. And there's every sign indicates that these protesters are very large in number, or they are growing in number, or both. Right? So I think it was a good idea. I think it's a bad idea to get out of it. Now, the sanctions are going to be back on Iran. That's going to cause a lot of the people there who I think were on our side to suffer a lot more than the government. And most importantly, it will allow their nuclear program to continue unchecked. We won't have eyes on it anymore. That's, I think, the situation right now. Armin probably has better. Sorry. Yeah.
I mean, no, I think, that was a very good summary. I do think again, when it comes to Trump, I don't think his decision has any much to do with whether it was a good deal or a bad deal. It was just Obama signed it, so that's why he had to go, right?
Yeah.
So it was an anti-Obama stance more than whether
like everything else.
Yeah. So, and when it comes to Iran, again, you have to understand that Iran has many different elements. There's many different people, many different pro-regime, anti-regime. Anti-regime people are now also both anti the reformers and the fundamentalists. The reform within the anti-regime people, a lot of people are happy that there are also, just to be very clear with this, there are anti-regime people in Iran that are happy that this deal got canceled, because it's very bizarre, because in Iran there are two groups of people that are happy that the deal got canceled, and the two cannot be more opposite, right? So the two groups of people that are happy are the people that are hoping this regime eventually falls, not all of them, right? Let's say half of a big portion of the people that are hoping that Iran regime will fall, and they are pro foreign intervention, and they want the United States to come intervene and save them from this regime. And they say they're hostages of this Islamic regime. Please come help us get the, no, don't do deals. They hated Obama. They hated the fact that Obama dealt with this regime, because they say how could you, especially after the elections where Ahmadinejad won by cheating apparently in the elections. They say, how could you, basically Obama dealing with that regime was basically Obama was dealing against the Iranian people, right? There are so many people that are anti the regime, but they are not for foreign intervention. They were not for this deal to be removed. So the other group of people in Iran that are happy that this deal was removed are the religious fundamentalists, right? Which is bizarre, because you have the people that are so anti this regime that they support everything, including foreign intervention. They will even support Israel to come help them save them from this regime. So you have that extreme end, and you have the religious fundamentalists happy the deal. The thing is that I think the religious fundamentalists in Iran have more to be happy about. Because right now, the United States has pulled out. Europe is trying to see if there's a way to stay in the deal without the United States. That's going to be almost impossible, even if they manage to find a way, which I don't know how, to save the deal without the United States. The fact is that European corporations, they don't have to do something that their government tells them to do, right? If United States puts sanctions on Iran, if a European company, even if your government tells you to go ahead, deal with Iran, they're like, no, thank you, because then I can't deal with the United States, right? So, between Iran and the United States, these multi-billion-dollar companies, which ones do you think they're going to choose, right? So, effectively, a deal with Europe, with all the other countries, without the U.S., even if they manage to save it, it's meaningless. The thing is that the more extreme elements in Iran, the religious fundamentalists and the IRGC, they control. They were going to lose their grip over the economy with foreign. Just
the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, right? The
Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They control so much of the economy, right? Iran's armed forces is basically three parts. One of them is the Artesh, which is a very long-standing military force which existed before the Islamic Revolution. The other one is the Niru Intizami, which is mostly responsible for internal city robbery stuff, and the other military force, which is the IRGC. Which is something invented by Khomeini, which is basically, originally, these were the Hezbollah. Before the Hezbollah in Lebanon, this is where Hezbollah comes from, right? They were called the Hezbollah when they were in the street, and Khomeini put them together, made them one force. It was originally supposed to be an anti-coup force, because what happened to the Shah, Khomeini didn't want that to happen to himself, right? He didn't want a coup, so he made a second military unit, third armed force unit and second military unit to protect his regime from separate from the Atash and protect him from the coup. And he was very adamant about making sure that they don't ever become political. But when he died, and I think he even mentioned political, and not only they became way more than what they were supposed to be, and not only they're political, they became unacceptable. I don't know if Khamenei could even say, I understand that Khamenei is seen as the supreme leader, but secretly I think IRGC is the supreme. They own some estimates suggest they own 1/3 of Iran's economy. Okay, and the monopoly they have in many different parts of the economy of Iran will be threatened with foreign competition or foreign contract, a lot of Rouhani, and there's a lot of suggestions that they need to be competing with other people when it comes to dealing contracts too and stuff like that, and they did not like that. And opening the borders and having free trade and all these other foreign countries coming in, it will let go of their grip over the economy, right? So this nuclear deal falling and not going. That's why they were so against this deal. They were very much against this nuclear deal. The only reason why this nuclear deal went through was for somehow, I think it was Hashmi Rafsanjani, right? Rafsanjani managed to convince Khamenei that we're not going to survive if this deal doesn't go through, right? And I think Khamenei reluctantly went to go ahead, and I think this is something that the IRGC was not happy with. So the only reason why it happened, it wouldn't happen if Khamenei didn't agree with it, and it went through. And the fact that now United States is pulling out of it makes Khamenei think that Rafsanjani kind of tricked him into this deal. And he thinks that the threat was not as bad as they think, and United States is like the world. I mean, think about it. If you look at what United States is doing in the region, United States was not able to defeat ISIS. Okay? Iran defeated ISIS, right? On the ground, because everyone else was just shooting stuff from the air. The only country that managed to provide the military group on the ground that was required to defeat ISIS was Iran. Okay? United States was not able to remove Assad. Right? United States and Saudi Arabia can't even defeat the fucking Houthis in Yemen with all their military might. Right? And none of these powers, ISIS, Assad, the Houthis, has a fraction of the military power of Iran. Even though Iran is nothing compared to U.S. military might, the U.S. military is not as willing to, wage war as Iran is. This is a problem with democracy, right? You can't just go in and just shoot things. It's hard. You have to get approval, blah, blah. I mean, as much as we think that United States moves into things without getting permission from international community, and sometimes without Congress approval these days, after 9/11, Congress approval apparently is not required. It's still not that easy. It's still not as easy as countries like Iran, Russia. So Russia's is only limited by the cost. China is not limited. I mean, China is a superpower. It doesn't have to check with anybody if it wants to do anything. Iran is also limited by cost, but Iran also has a lot more dedicated military force. People that are going there to die, right? People that are going there to kill ISIS members and hoping that they will die in the way because they will become martyrs. The amount of dedication that the military force that Iran sends on the ground is way more than some other, most other countries, right? So even though Iran's military is nothing compared to United States, it's still a lot more stronger than what Assad had or what the Houthis had or what ISIS had. But Iran was needed to defeat ISIS. Iran managed to turn the tides a little bit in Syria and keep Assad on, and when it was almost giving in, then Russia joined in. Iran's tiny support for the Houthis has managed to keep them up. These are the Houthis. Think about it. The Houthis in Yemen are some of the poorest of all. These people don't even have shoes to wear, and they're and Saudi Arabia with the largest weapon deals in history, but with the most technologically advanced weapons that they buy from United States, and with United States military's industry support while they're bombing Yemen for 3 years, haven't managed to defeat the Houthis. And do you think that it's going to be? And think about even Iran's military proxies, Hezbollah, when they defeated ISIS. When they defeated Israel, was very small compared to what Hezbollah is now. So Hezbollah by itself can fuck shit up in the Middle East right now. Add that and that's not the only proxy force Iran has. Iran has so many proxy forces in Iraq without even sending its Quds forces. Look at what happened in Kurdistan, right? Every single country was begging the Kurdistan to not have a referendum. And they went with the referendum. And then they sent their military to all the other places, and the whole world was panicking. A conflict was being started between Iraq and the Kurdistan, right? It took one flight from the Quds army, Soleimani, from the leader of the Quds army of Iran, to go to talk to Bazargani, and within one flight, within one discussion, they pulled all their military back. I have no idea what they talked about, but this is the level of influence Iran has, right? So I mean, without this nuclear deal, I think, what's the intention? Because a lot of people think that the intention is to eventually attack Iran, right? Or give the impression that you're going to attack Iran, because the military, nothing really happens unless the military arm of the United States in the Middle East approve. Nothing in the Middle East really happens unless the military arm, the military industry in the United States approve of it, right? Even when this nuclear deal was being signed, Obama had to sign a whole bunch of military agreements, contracts, to keep these military the military industry happy, right? At the same time, because the nuclear deal kind of suggested that there's going to be less military intervention, and they wouldn't like that. So there was a whole bunch of contracts being signed at the same time, just to be like, okay, at least we're getting some contracts out of this, which nobody needs. We're just going to make weapons for people that nobody needs. But now, if you look at their stocks, when Trump canceled the deal, their stock values went up, right? Because the chances of conflict are more. The fact that military industry stocks will go up when this deal gets canceled, I mean, these are the people that are looking at buying these stocks, they have their money on the line. They're not going to buy stocks for no reason. It does. They have the most advanced methods of the most of measuring the chances of conflict. And when stock prices go up, when the deal falls, the stock prices of military companies goes up when this deal falls. It does suggest that the best minds behind analyzing this conflicts, analyzing the situation, do think that the chances of conflicts are going to go higher. So, but with the United States, the thing is, you also have to understand that there are other lobbyists that play here as well. Okay, Israel has one of the largest lobby groups in the United States, and so does Saudi Arabia. Okay, Saudi Arabia has a lot of influence in United States politics, and Iran is more of a threat to them than it will ever be to United States, and they kind of want United States to fight their war for them, and getting rid of this deal is one way to do that. But again, if you look at Israel, go back to Israel, you have to understand that for Netanyahu specifically, it might not even be, it might be more about taking attention away from the corruption scandals that he's having, right? The more security threats to Israel there is, the better it is for Netanyahu. Anyway, do you want to add stuff here? Because I think I spoke for a whole...
Well, no. Yeah, I wanted to ask one more thing before wrapping up, because we've been on for like almost 2.5 hours now, is that just quickly, there was this... when Obama actually did the deal, right? He paid Iran lots of money, and there's this rumor that went around, and for good reason, that he did it to get those prisoners back from Iran. And I remember saying this, how Trump got the North Korean prisoners back using diplomatic engagement. Obama did the same thing with the Iranian prisoners. But at the same time that he was doing that, right, there was this transfer of $400 million from the U.S. to Iran. I was going in a plane, and this is around the same time the prisoners were being released. So there was this huge controversy about why is Obama paying so much money? Is this part of the Iran deal to pay Iran hundreds of millions of dollars to release these U.S. prisoners? And it turns out, no, it's that this money was actually Iran's money that had been frozen in the U.S. And as part of the negotiations, Iran had asked, like, okay, well, you got to give us our money back. So this was actually their money that was returned. It's just that it was coincidentally returned around the same time that they were negotiating the prisoner exchange. Well,
it wasn't coincidental. It wasn't coincidental.
Well, no, it wasn't coincidental. It was actually because it was part of the whole deal. Right. So both of these were apparently separate elements of the deal. But is there anything?
So, but let's see.
What do you think about that?
Well, that was frozen money that was released, and a lot of.
What was the money for? What was it? I
think it was from the previous regime, right? After, So, I mean, there's a.
So they're returning Iran's money to Iran,
right? Yeah, but that was pretty known. That was Iran's money already, right? But the people that know that and still complain about the fact that Iran, what they're pointing, and a lot of other people point to the fact that the money that Iran got, not from that direct cash injection, but the money that Iran got from the nuclear deal, the fact that it did more trades, that managed to sell oils in the open market, right? Mm-hmm. All of that money, they saying went from. Didn't go to the Iranian people. It went for Iran's Shia imperialist,
agenda,
building this Shia crescent over. This was, you have people. Okay, so let's shed on Iran a little bit here, okay? So because it seemed like we're pro-Iran, pro-Iran Islamic. Not again. Here's a tip. I always forget this, people. If you want to speak against Iran without making Iranians think like you're against them, what you could do is you could talk against the Islamic Republic, right? You could, instead of saying Iran, just move Iran out of your vocabulary, and just when you want to talk about it negatively, mention the Islamic Republic, and when you want to talk about it positively, say the Iranian people. Right? So basically that way when they're listening to you, they say like, oh, you're separating that. You're against the Islamic Republic, but you're for the Iranian people. So that's how you signal that, right? So because when you talk about it as Iran, then people listening will think like you're attacking them. And this is actually good politics, because a lot of the politics of fighting the Iran's government is to turn its own people against it, right? But a lot of people say that's not what's happening. The Iranian people are turning against the Islamic Republic itself. This has nothing to do with foreign intervention. This is all from within, right? Which is true. That doesn't mean that it's not being taken advantage of as well. And then people that don't want the West to meddle is saying, well, when you meddle, you're basically taking, you're making it seem like this is foreign intervention, so you're not helping, so get the fuck out. But they'll let us fight our regime without your help because you're taking our legitimacy away, right? Then a lot of people that are for foreign intervention in Iran, they say it doesn't matter if they intervene or not. Even if they don't intervene, they're going to say it's a foreign intervention, and we need all the help we can get, so please intervene, okay? But that's a separate argument. But you have to understand, Khomeini is, when he did the Islamic Revolution, when there's in 1979, it was not supposed to be an Iranian revolution, okay? It was an Islamic revolution. In fact, Khomeini didn't really like nationalistic attitude, okay? He wasn't for Iran, okay? He was for Islam. In fact, he wanted that attitude to go away, but Iranians are very nationalistic. That's a force that he could not fight, ever recommend, right? The idea was this was supposed to start in Iran and continue. This was supposed to be an Islamic revolution from all oppressed people against royalty, against kings, against monarchy, okay, against imperialist puppets, against tyrants, right?
Right.
And it's supposed to start in Iran and go again in Iraq against Saddam, and in Saudi, especially fucking Saudi Arabia. Oh my God, Saudi Arabia. You would think that Khomeini, by the end of his life, he would hate Saddam more than anybody else, but no. He hated Saudi Arabia more than anybody else, right? But the thing is, and he saw Saudi Arabia's arm in the 8-year war with Iraq anyways, okay? Even more than the US, which is bizarre, right? But this was supposed to continue all across the Islamic world, and Khomeini was supposed to be like the Pope of Islam or something like that. And the reason why it never continued the way he thought was two things. First of all, at first it was so celebrated. In fact, the revolution in Iran was a turning point, a huge turning point in extreme anti-West movements all across the Middle East. Right? It started at Saudi Arabia and Pakistan entirely changed because of it. Right? But the first barrier for this to start being accepted is more and more Muslims realize that this Islamic revolution is more of a Shia revolution than an Islamic. It's just a certain brand of Islam, right? Not all Islam. Yeah. So that was a huge barrier for it to spread everywhere. But Khomeini expected for at least the Shias in Iraq to rise up on the side of Iran against Saddam, and the Shias in Saudi Arabia, which is the oil-rich part of Saudi Arabia, to rise up and join Iran against Saudi Arabia. And it kind of happened in Saudi Arabia a little bit before they got fucking crushed, and it really never happened in Iraq. I think the Iraqi's national identity was a bit maybe stronger, even though it was a baby country. They never felt that much that they need to be aligned with Khomeini because he's Shia and they're Shia, right? But the idea was that this Shia, the wave of Shiism is going to go, all across the Middle East, and this revolution is going to continue. The fact that they didn't win the Iran-Iraq war, nobody really won. Saddam didn't win either. Everything ended where exactly it started, right? This is something that Khomeini is his greatest defeat. He said that he's drinking a cup of poison when he signed the peace agreement with Iraq, right? That's how he described it. But the songs that when people were attacking. To be fair, Saddam was first attacked Iran, okay? But when Iran attacks Iraq, the war was supposed to continue until they reached Karbala. The songs said first, we're going to meet in Karbala. We're going to get Karbala. Karbala was supposed to be for Shia, not for a Sunni regime. So they're going to get Karbala, and they're going to go all the way to Quds. This is why the Quds, which means Jerusalem, right? This is why the Quds Armin is named Quds, because the final destination of the foreign intervention of Iranian regime is supposed to be in Quds.
Jerusalem.
Yeah, it's supposed to be Jerusalem. But they're gonna capture it all. But Khomeini died, and none of that happened. But what's amazing is that after his death, seems to be moving in the direction with different methods, with political methods. Faster, in ways that Khomeini didn't imagine them. Like now, most of it is thanks to United States. United States came there. They removed Saddam, and they basically create such a vacuum for Iran. Iran already had built on its network for many years, for its Shia network all across the Middle East, and by removing Saddam, it just led Iran to just move in, right? The only place where this whole Shia takeover of Iran, the exporting their revolution, as they call it, exporting Iranian's revolution, the only place it really worked was in Lebanon, where Hezbollah became such a proxy of Iran. But nowhere else it really picked up until United States came and removed Saddam. And only recently, until very recently, things were working very well for Iran. Like they basically the Assad managed to get him stay in power. Iraq's government was very Shia and very pro-Iran until this recent elections, which even though is still very pro-Shia, is not the kind of Shiism that Iran wants, right? So it's a very competitive Shia right now to Iran. So there's a little bit of in Iraq, things are not looking as good as they used to, a little bit. And also in Syria, things were looking great because Assad seemed to be like Iran's puppet, because Assad was very indebted to both Russia and Iran for right now not having somebody shoving a knife in your butt like what happened to Gaddafi. He owes that right now to Iran and Russia. But so Iran is like, okay, now you have to listen to what I have to say. But because Russia is there, I think Assad feels like, you know what? I don't have to listen to Iran, I guess, right? Because Iran expects too much. Iran is like, we're going to come here. We're going to go and build and Golan Heights. We're going to have a military base here. And Assad is like, yeah, I don't know about that, right? It seemed like they were cutting up Syria in parts, like this is going to be Assad's part, this is going to be Russia's part, this is going to be Iran's part, and Iran kind of wanted like the Golan Heights part. Iran wanted the part that is right next to Israel, right? Iran kind of was like, this is fantastic. I have now a road, like I have ground route coming from Iran's border going directly to Israel's border. This is beautiful, right? But they're like, no, you don't get that part of Syria. You're going to get a different part of Syria. I think, people even are saying that there seems to be some back channel discussions between Iran and Israel over this, which is unbelievable if it's fucking true. Like, I cannot believe that.
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, you know how a lot of bin Laden's family members ended up in Tehran too, right? And at that point, there were experts on this stuff saying that, Iran would never give refuge to bin Laden. It's a Sunni Shia thing. But it's weird. Sometimes, you make alliances. It depends on why you're making the alliances.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just that. There was some... Okay, so, no.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, is what I'm saying, that if weirder things have happened.
Yeah, like one example of what you just said happened was Iran actually at one point gave a go-ahead to ISIS, which is their mortal enemy, right? ISIS hates Iran and Iran hates ISIS. But there was a point where the Kurds were getting too much advantage, and Iran kind of gave the green light for ISIS that they're not going to get shot if they go there and attack the Kurds. So there are some things that happen. And actually that's the example that United States loves to point to when it comes to saying, because supporting ISIS is like the biggest taboo thing for everybody to point to each other, to be like, you're supporting terrorists. No, you're supporting terrorists. No. So whenever anybody had anything that they did with ISIS, everybody points at the United States with ISIS, because they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? ISIS was born inside your fucking prisons, right? And then they point to Assad. They're like, Assad empties his prisoners, and those were ISIS members came out. And for Iran, this is the example they go to. This one example they find out, because other than that, Iran was always like hostile. And, ISIS also did some terrorist attacks inside Iran's capital, right? But some people say that might have been Iran itself, because they really need the anti-ISIS agenda. Because Iran really needed to sell the idea that we are in this other... Because Iranian people are angry with Iran's government that has so much military in other countries. They're like, we need this money spent at home, right? So that attack on Iran's parliament by ISIS was such a good excuse for Iran to tell its people, see, this is why we fight in other countries, because if we don't fight it there, it's going to show up at home. Exactly the line United States uses in here.
I know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I was going to say that if you heard any of that, the ISIS, the Iran, all of the stuff, Israel, Saudi Arabia,
I want to point to the people that support remove the nuclear agreement, because the argument there is that, look, there should be no... Iran is a fucked up regime. It has a fucked up regime. And these are not people that should have nuclear weapon ever, any condition. And this nuclear deal was a slow progress towards that, right? It did not stop them from having a nuclear deal. It was just give them the green lights to slowly get a nuclear deal. And people then you respond to that. Well, without this deal, now they're going to move faster to be able to not a nuclear deal, having enriched uranium. To be clear, Iran claims that they never want to have a nuclear weapon.
That's what they say.
Right, and even even Pompeo said that he thinks Iran was never planning on having a nuclear weapon even before signing the deal, right?
They want the capability, though.
Yeah, so this is the point. As a
deterrent.
Yes, exactly. Because the deterrent... So Iran looks at North Korea and sees how powerful a nuclear weapon is as a deterrent. But it also knows that actually... people have to understand that no matter how religious fundamentalist these people might be, they're not idiots, okay? They use idiots, but the Iran's political calculation has so far been on point when it comes to maneuvering the geopolitics in the Middle East, relative to United States, relative to fucking Saudi Arabia, of course. Like they're acting. Saudi Arabia has been the worst. They just make decisions and they see how it. They just make random decisions and they look at the what happens.
Yeah, that's
the people that have done the most with the least amount of resources have been Russia and Iran so far. Okay, with the lowest amount of budget. But Iran has been unfortunately very, very strategic in the decisions that they have made in the Middle East. They have planned things for different scenarios way down the road. Like United States, no politicians in the United States there was not a single plan to what to do after ISIS. There was no official plan anywhere. By anybody, but this was one step ahead, right? But Iran already had so many different plans for so many different scenarios, which is bizarre to. I mean, again, this is one of the benefits of not having a democracy is there's less moving pieces for you to be able to make more decisive decisions. But okay, so Iran. The most common understanding is, and again, you could dispute this, that Iran knew that having a nuclear weapon would be too disastrous. Like that would be a suicide. Okay, having a nuclear weapon, but being able to make a nuclear weapon fast is as good of a deterrent as actually having a nuclear weapon, right? And having because you basically get none of the stigma and none of the international attack on actually having a nuclear deal and all the benefits from it. So none of the costs and all of the benefits. The problem was that was not good enough for the international community. They saw getting close to even being able to make a nuclear weapon is basically as bad as having one. So there was so much international pressure for that deal, right? And the reformists, when they were still relevant in Iran, right now they're very unpopular, very unpopular. They are hated by both right wingers and people which want regime change in Iran, right? So when they basically they had so much support for this deal, and one of the mistakes they made is that they promised the world to Iranian people. They made it seem like if this nuclear deal gets signed, like we're gonna get trade, investments, everybody's gonna get rich. It's gonna be so great. Like the whole world, we're gonna open the doors. We're gonna have international relationships with the United States. We might young people think like we're gonna have discos and McDonald's and everything is gonna it's gonna be we're slowly gonna take this is the idea, this is the dreams that people had with this nuclear deal. So they thought their lives are gonna become and again, I'm not painting everyone under the with the same brush. I'm mixing both people that wanted a cultural change, people that love Western culture, but they're not the same. There are a lot of people that didn't give a shit about that. They just thought that we want to make more money, maybe a better relationship with the rest of the world is going to put more food at the table, and stuff like that. So people were very hopeful, right? And the thing is, even with the nuclear deal, most of that did not happen. And a lot of people in Iran blame that on the fact that whatever benefit we might have gone went from Iran's ambitions in foreign countries, but some other Iranians blame it on something else. A lot of Iranians blame it on the fact that even with the nuclear deal, most financial institutions and most other institutions still found it risky to deal with Iran, right? Because and the fact that Trump managed to take the deal away like that proved them right. Because if they were now dealing with Iran, all these deals would have been disastrous for these financial institutions. So even though United States had given the green light to deal with Iran, these companies were like, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to wait and see what happens to the first people that deal with Iran, right? So it was like, so that's why the nuclear deal didn't bring as much as investment as people hoped for, right? And that's why the support for it died also a little bit in Iran. And that's why a lot of people, and the fact that this deal didn't bring all the money in, and the fact that United States failure in the Middle East suggested to Khamenei that, United States is not like the whole world is not as Iran can survive on its own, and Hashemi might have, before he died, Rafsanjani might have kind of tricked Khamenei into agreeing with this deal. He said, like, Khamenei basically is coming out like, I had suspicions that this deal was not good, but I wanted you all to learn, right? Like that kind of narrative. So now they're happy that this deal failed, and a lot of the far right people are coming out like, we told you so. We told you that you can't trust United States. We told you that this deal is not a good idea. Next time when you want to deal with the United States, listen to us. See, this is why you don't trust the United States. This is why we have to become self-reliant, right?
That sounds like that sounds pretty damaging.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
Yeah, but again, are the people how would you respond to people that say that, look, this deal is not good, we should just attack Iran? Iran is a country that is becoming very ambitious across the Middle East. This is not a country that is good for this regime should change. This deal was you don't deal with terrorists, and this is a terrorist regime. And this deal, what it was doing was basically acknowledging Iran as a country that you could do deals with. And this country can only respond to one thing, and that's force, and that's why military might, and that's how you deal with Iran. How would you respond to that?
What I would say is that you'd have to look at the repercussions. The repercussions that there were in Iraq after that nobody seemed to foresee, including the people who waged the war, the Bush-Cheney administration. Those repercussions reached so far and wide, right, that those effects are still felt today. It's still affecting the U.S. economy today, still affecting the world economy, and it's just been enormously harmful. And that would be just a fraction of the kind of repercussions that would happen if anybody entered this proxy war, pretty much between Iran and Saudi Arabia. It would be a complete disaster. That's one thing. The other thing is that I do think that one of the insights that the Obama administration had about the Iranian people, right, that they are, they're kind of ahead of it. They had how you had the Arab Spring where all these dictators were coming down. So they had that kind of thing happen in 1979. And immediately when the dictators come down, the Islamists come in. Like in Egypt, it was the Muslim Brotherhood. In, Syria, you had all of these, like the rebels turn into these fundamentalist Islamic, because they tend to be just the most organized. So they're the ones who come in after the dictators go. And then the third part of the cycle is what kind of Iran is going through. Right. Where they're tired of the dictators More than 70% of the population is under 30. They haven't really seen anything except for this clerical, religious lunacy that they've been living under. And now there's a third part of the cycle, and change comes slow, where
but a lot of people are saying we're tired of change. A lot of people in Iran are saying they promised us change for 40 years. And again, this is not all Iranians.
Iran has a precedent for revolutions. That's what I'm trying to say. Right. I'm saying that there are this clerical establishment is not united. There is a lot of infighting. There are a lot of problems there. There are constant sort of, uprisings against government. Each one is more intense than the next. So there's something that's happening over there that may be a third phase, and it may be something that's unprecedented, at least in recent times, in the Muslim world at least. So I think that is a worthwhile thing to invest in. Right. And I think there's one way in which you can fuck that up in one fell swoop, and that is by going military when you don't need to. Like if you want to go military, you don't need to go military.
Devil's advocate, but then you're going to let a country like Iran become a nuclear power, and that's unacceptable. How would you respond to that, though?
North Korea is a nuclear power.
Yeah, but that's
unacceptable. They keep on their saber rattling all the time.
They say that's unacceptable too, though. We should, and they say, okay, but look how big of an unsolvable problem North Korea became. Do you want Iran to become like that as well?
Did it really? I mean, how big of an unsolvable problem has it become? I mean, it could become a problem, and you can contain it. There are different ways to go about it. I am not saying that you don't attack a country that does this kind of thing. I just think it's too soon to do it. I think that the cost of attacking Iran and all of the shockwaves that it would send across. I mean, if you think all the conspiracy theories and the anti-Americanism and all that stuff is bad right now, it's just, or the terrorism, terrorists running freely, terrorists having all these safe havens, whether it's in Sudan or whether it's in Yemen now, whether it's in the Philippines, whether it's in Iraq, whether it's in Syria. I mean, these places are increasing, and every time we do something like this, things get worse. Right. So,
one thing.
Right now, I think specific, and this wouldn't apply for every country. Every situation has its own prescription for a solution. But Iran, I think at the moment, considering the dynamics in that country with the youth, with the people, that dichotomy that you're talking about the Islamic Republic versus the Iranian people, right? That dichotomy. Considering all of the dynamics of that, I think.
But the thing is, it's not as simple. Like, a lot of people, when they are supporter of the Iranian protesters, they look at it as like this is how I presented it, kind of like as well. But I think I want to be more nuanced than that. It's not like just the Iranian government versus the Iranian people. And the thing is that when you look at and I know this is something that maybe a lot of Iranians would not like it if I say it, but it's true. And the protests suggest that, Iranian people are ready for regime change. Okay. They want regime change. But the truth is that that's not all. Okay. First of all, even among people that hate the Iran regime, there's not all of them want a regime change. A lot of them that hate their own government, and and some of them are religious, some of them are not religious. Even among them, they look at Syria, they look at Libya, and they're afraid that if this government falls, if it's going to be chaos, it's going to be civil war, what's going to happen to their country, right? They think it's going to be, a lot of them are afraid that the Kurds in Iran are going to claim, most Iranians are very, very nationalistic, right? And they're worried about their countries getting divided up into smaller countries, right? And there will be nothing left of Iran, right? They're afraid that the Kurds, the Azeris in the north, the Baluchistan, the Arabs in the southwest, in Khuzestan, some of them, especially the Kurds, or more than anyone else, tries to claim independence, or becomes like chaotic for a very long time. Like, at least their lives are stable, at least they have a job. They were like, but they want to lose all that, right? So again, the people that want regime change, when you talk to them, a lot of them make it seem like they're the majority and everybody wants regime change, right? And the people that are against the government and don't want regime change, they also try to make it seem like they are the sane ones, right? Because even if this government is a bad one, if you remove it, it's going to be chaotic. But then you also have, and you have to acknowledge, there's also a lot of civilians that would die for Khamenei, okay? And there are millions of them. I mean, to be honest, there are millions of people that want this regime and love this regime and would even go and would willingly die in defense of it. And if you remove this regime, these millions of other people that are not in the protest, like, yeah, you see the protest, but there are the other side of it too. They exist. And a lot of the protesters might suggest that they are minority, but no, they are in the millions. And what's going to happen to them? Do you think they're just quietly going to walk away if you put a new regime on? There's going to be war. They're not going to be happy. They're going to be like, Khamenei is our imam. What the fuck are you doing? Right? You can't do that to our imam, right? So I really don't know, I haven't, for the people that do want regime change, again, I'm not against the people that want regime change, but I haven't seen them addressing the fact that these people are going to be millions of them. So if there's two scenarios, the people that are against regime change and don't want regime are against the government but don't want regime change. They think it might be a failed state if you remove this government. And if you do get a failed state, as if you look at the Western countries, if you look at their interest, then you're going to have a Shia version of ISIS coming out of Iran, which is much stronger, much more armed, and much more organized than ISIS ever was. Okay, and that's not good for everybody in the region and the entire world, but it's amazing for whoever is selling the weapons to fight them. But if it doesn't become a failed state, it might turn into another Shia government, because I haven't seen any other organized group. I mean, the protesters are there, and there are a lot of them. There's a lot of people that are, a majority, I would say, in Iran are tired of this government, right? But there is no unifying, organized group of people that exist that are as organized as the Shias that are not in the government. Like, I think when you have a power vacuum, who gets to power? The most organized ones. The most, right? So
yeah, that's what I was saying. Whenever the dictators fall, that's why all the Islamists come into power.
Yeah, so if you remove these people, who's going to come into power? Another Islamist group, I guess. Right? I mean, I don't know. Like, who do we have?
No. This is that's when you have a secular dictator. But you're right. Like right now, I don't know what the most organized people are that are not the establishment, but I think it'll look a lot more different than the current. It's always going to be very different than the current.
The reason why I know United States doesn't have any. Okay, you look at United States and you think, oh, they're an advanced country. Of course, behind the scenes they must have great plans and stuff. And you're like, yeah, maybe you probably do. But then you look at who they're funding. Okay, against the Islamic government. You know who they're funding? They're funding Mujahideen Khalq. They're funding the MEK. The one group, the only group that Iranians are unified against more than their own government and Saudi Arabia, the group that is hated the most among Iranian people are the Mujahideen Khalq, are the MEKs. And United States is looking at them and funding them as if there could be alternative governments when it comes. Like, what the fuck
That's
are
just
you doing?
When it comes to the United States choosing opposition parties to fund in the Middle East, it's we saw that in Syria. We saw what happened in Iraq. I mean, it never works out. But Armin.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just saying we're coming up on 3 hours.
Okay,
so
sorry.
Yeah, I gotta. So it's getting late, and this is one of those things that this will be continued. I think we should definitely have another episode on this. It's going to be a monster episode. So whoever's listening to this and stuck around this long, thank you very much. And it seems like there's a bunch of pretty much all you guys who were there before. But we need to come back. We need to continue this, especially with Iran, because I think that the kind of perspective you have on it is
we should Well, let's do one on Pakistan because I feel like I talk so much. We should do one that you talk more than I do.
Oh yeah, I don't even. We might get. Yeah, let's see. I'd like to bring somebody else on to talk about Pakistan. It's becoming kind of interesting over there.
Yeah. But I want to learn more about Pakistan.
Yeah, but I had fun with this, man. We should do like more of these live streams on the political situation in those countries because I don't think you see this stuff.
I know some very good Iranian journalists in Washington and other places that we might bring on as a guest because to bring us some.
Yeah, we actually have some good ideas for guests. So those of you who are listening, I mean, there's a couple that are confirmed. Coming up soon will be Rehan Abir. Rehan Abir is a Bangladeshi blogger. So he was actually on a kill list. And he was a very good friend of Avijit Roy and several of the other bloggers that were killed in Bangladesh and who have over the years. So he's in the thick of it all. He knows the situation very closely. It's been chillingly close with him. He's lost many of his friends. So, and his story is pretty incredible. He was eventually given protection, and he's in Canada now. So we're going to be talking to him. Also, we've confirmed Jerry Coyne. So Jerry Coyne. Many of you know Jerry Coyne from as the author of Why Evolution is True, and more recently, Fact versus Fiction, why science and religion are incompatible. So he's going to be joining us, and I'm really, really looking forward to that.
Wow.
Yeah, especially because we're going to be talking about some of the Islamic perspectives and the Quranic claims, the scientific claims, the people who claim that the Quran was really right on science and so on.
Maybe we could. He would be a great person to talk about some of the Quran and science claims. I don't know if you've ever been talking about that. So that
I would. I talked to him about some of the stuff that we'd like to talk about. So it'd be kind of fun. I don't know if he knows that much about it, but I will bring it up because I did that quite a bit. And in addition to that, we're also going to get the Muslimish conference is happening in June 23rd, with myself and Mariam Namazi, and Alish Bazarmin is also going to be speaking there. Ibrahim Abdullah, our previous guest, and Wissam Sharafuddin is also going to be coming on the podcast just a little bit, hopefully around that time to talk about. Hey, you wanted to respond, Armin, to some of the discussions you had with Ibrahim about, what the definition of a Muslim is. So that should be kind of fun.
Bring it on.
Yeah. And I spoke with him at Harvard, and he was talking about dialogue and approaches. He's a fantastic guy, just really smart.
There's a lot.
He used to be an imam. He used to be a Shia imam.
Oh wow!
Previous. So, and he quotes the Quran like it's like Mother Goose, man. The guy knows it inside out. It's amazing. Cool. So it'll be a lot of fun having him on too.
So a lot of people in the live chat. Jim, thank you so much for joining us. Ace Area 51. Mars is saying great. Jim is saying great discussion. Mars is saying Jerry Coyne equals ISAM, and Mars is also saying thank you for the detailed discussion, guys. Mike is saying there are so many voices that I don't know who to trust. So I love to hear more from you guys. Thank you, Mike. The Booty Man is saying thanks. It was a fascinating 3 hours. Oh wow, thank you guys. These are all our the people in the live chat. These are all our patrons. So guys, without you, we wouldn't be going this far. We didn't know if we could continue. The only reason why we're going is because you guys are supporting the show. So thank you so much for being a patron.
Yeah.
You guys.
Yeah, we do that, and thank you very much. And anybody else who's listening to this on the audio version, become a patron, get involved in the conversation, ask questions. We do address it. We do get to it. You saw that many times people bring up really, really good points, and I do it many times. I'm saying something and I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, that's a good point. I have to respond to that now. So right. I think it's great. But anyway, we should go now. Armin?
Yeah, just another thing I want to say that we do have. I'm trying to do more one-on-one discussions with our patrons. We do have secret patron meetings for our $10 plus patrons. So if you're a $10 plus patron, reach out to me either on Facebook or on our Patreon. Sometimes it takes me a while to see messages because I get bombarded with messages, but I will set it up. I will schedule something with you if you're, and even if you scheduled it once and you want to do it again, I will find the time to do one-on-one discussions with our $10 plus patrons, because without you guys, this show wouldn't happen. So it's either going to be me, Ali, or both of us, but we will make it happen. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So
Okay, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
The secular jihadists have been made possible thanks to the Illuminati and the covert support of Israel and the CIA. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. If you like what we do, please support us. Share the podcast with your friends. Write and tweet us with topic and guest suggestions. Or head over to secularjihadist.com and give $1 or more for exclusive access to live video. Have your questions read and answered on the air, and more. Till next time, may the flying spaghetti monster be with you.